This man walked into a war zone with his shirt already off, dropped the demon back, all for one, the biggest villain in history, got his jaw ripped off by this ogre of a man who showed up uninvited, and left to go home to bang Midnight and Rumi all night. Oh, and he's got women fighting over who carries his kid. Izuku Midoriya became someone with a big dick and a big back.
Welcome, legends, to Chronos Recom. I wrote this story myself, so if you have any suggestions or what-ifs you want to see, drop it in the comments below. Also, just wanted to let you know I've got a Patreon set up now for anyone who wants to support the channel directly. You can get early access to stories, submit direct fan requests, and get exclusive content. It's totally optional, but if you want to help keep these stories coming, check it out. Links in the description. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that bell so you never miss an upload. Let's dive into this story.
The day Izuku Midoriya learned he would never develop a quirk, the doctor expected tears. Every child cried. Every parent held their kid and whispered something about being special, about the world finding a place for them, about quirks meaning nothing in the grand scheme of things. Lies, mostly. Comfortable lies told to children who would grow up knowing exactly what they lacked. Izuku Midoriya wept. She crumbled in the plastic chair and pressed both hands over her mouth and sobbed like the world had collapsed on top of her only son before he ever got the chance to stand. Izuku sat on the examination table with his feet dangling off the edge. 4 years old, small, green curls falling into his eyes. The doctor's words hung in the air. "I'm sorry, but your son will never manifest a quirk." And the room waited for the breakdown. Izuku smiled. It came slow. The corners of his mouth pulled up and his eyes half closed, and something behind his expression shifted. The doctor saw it. Inko missed it through her tears. But the doctor saw it, a look that belonged on something ancient and predatory, something that had been sleeping inside this child's bones since long before the boy was born. "Good," Izuku said. One word. 4 years old. The doctor blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said good." Izuku hopped off the table. He walked to his mother. He put a tiny hand on her knee and looked up at her with those wide green eyes, and the smile was still there, and there was something wrong with it, something too sure. "Don't cry, Mom. I don't need one." Inko pulled him into a hug and cried harder because she thought he was being brave. He wasn't being brave. He meant every single word. That night, while Inko slept with swollen eyes and a heavy heart, Izuku Midoriya stood in his bedroom and looked at his hands. He flexed his fingers. He squeezed them into fists. Something hummed inside his chest, deep, tectonic, like a second heartbeat that had always been there but only now decided to announce itself. He dropped to the floor and did push-ups until his arms gave out. Then he did more. His body screamed at him. His muscles burned. His joints popped. He kept going. The Hanma blood did what it always does. It answered strength with more strength. By the time Izuku Midoriya turned 6, he was doing one-armed pull-ups on the playground bars while other children struggled to hang on with 2 hands. By 8, he could crack concrete with a stomp. The playground at the local park had a section of pavement that the city replaced 3 times that year. Nobody could figure out why it kept breaking. Izuku could. He just never told them. By 10, he ran laps around Musutafu carrying a bag of bricks on his back because body weight alone stopped being a challenge. The early morning joggers on the harbor path would see a child built like a young ox thundering past them with a 50-kilogram rucksack and a face that showed zero strain, and they would stop and stare and then look at their own sneakers and feel a very specific type of shame. Nobody trained him. He had 0 mentors. He had no dojo, no instructor, no regimen pulled from a book. His body simply told him what it wanted, and he listened. He ate like a predator, raw fish, rare steak, eggs by the dozen, milk by the gallon. Inko spent her entire grocery budget trying to keep up with a 10-year-old who consumed 6,000 calories a day and grew muscle like other children grew teeth. She bought a second refrigerator, then a chest freezer, then a wholesale membership. "Izuku, honey, this is the grocery bill for a family of 12, she said once, staring at the receipt. "I need more protein," he said, gnawing on a chicken thigh. "Buy a 3rd refrigerator." She bought a third refrigerator. The neighbors started talking. The other mothers whispered at pickup. Izuku Midoriya was already taller than most 12-year-olds. His arms were corded with lean muscle that had no business being on a child. He moved like something out of a nature documentary. Smooth, silent, every step deliberate. When he looked at people, they looked away first. They didn't know why. Their bodies knew. He attended school. He sat in the back. He answered questions when called on, and his grades were perfect because a body like his required a mind to match. The strongest creature in any world understood everything: martial arts, science, philosophy, the movement of tides, the architecture of bones. The body was the temple. The mind was the architect. Izuku absorbed information the way his muscles absorb punishment, endlessly, hungrily, with zero waste. He studied fighting styles by watching them once and understanding them completely. Judo, leverage and hip rotation using the opponent's weight against them. Boxing, angles, footwork, the transfer of kinetic energy through a straight line. Muay Thai, the 8-point system, elbows and knees as primary weapons, the clinch as a position of dominance. Capoeira, deception through movement, the spinning kick as both evasion and attack. Wrestling, chain wrestling, takedowns, top pressure that broke the spirit before the body. He watched, he absorbed, he combined everything into something that wasn't a style. Styles were for people who needed frameworks. What Izuku built was annihilation in human form. He had one problem, and its name was Bakugo Katsuki. Bakugo was the pride of their elementary school. His explosion quirk made him the undisputed king of the classroom, and he wore that crown like he'd earned it through something other than genetics. He was loud. He was aggressive. He aimed his superiority at everyone who stood below him, which, in his mind, was everyone alive. He aimed it hardest at Izuku Midoriya, the quirkless kid, the kid who should have been an easy target, the kid who had no quirk and therefore, in Bakugo's worldview, had no value and no right to walk with his head up. The first time Bakugo tried to corner Izuku was after school on a Wednesday in their 3rd year. 3 of Bakugo's friends stood behind him like props in a play they'd rehearsed 100 times. Little pops of heat sizzled from Bakugo's palms. His grin was wide and mean. "Hey, Midoriya," Bakugo said, and the name came out like a slur. "I heard you were running around the park carrying rocks again. What's the point? You think muscles are going to replace a quirk?" Izuku kept walking. "I'm talking to you." Bakugo stepped in front of him. The 3 friends circled. The hallway was empty. "You're quirkless. You know what that means? It means you're nothing. It means I could blow your face off right now and nobody would even..." Izuku's hand moved. He caught Bakugo's right wrist mid-sentence. His grip closed. Bakugo's explosion sputtered and died in his palm because the fingers couldn't extend. The bones in Bakugo's hand compressed. Bakugo's knees buckled. Izuku squeezed harder. The sound was ugly, wet, final. 2 of Bakugo's knuckles cracked inward. His ring finger bent at an angle that fingers should never bend. Bakugo's face went white. His mouth opened, but nothing came out except a thin, high whine that sounded nothing like the king of anything. His 3 friends stood frozen. One of them had wet himself. The other 2 had gone gray. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Izuku leaned in. His face was 2 inches from Bakugo's. His green eyes were flat, empty. The smile from the doctor's office was there again. The old one, the wrong one, the one that belonged on something that had existed long before this body was born. "If you ever raise a hand to me again," Izuku whispered, and his voice was too deep for a 10-year-old, too steady, too final, "I will rip your jaw off." He let go. Bakugo dropped to the floor, holding his hand. His friends stayed frozen. Izuku stepped over Bakugo's legs and walked down the hallway with his school bag over one shoulder, and the 3 boys behind him said absolutely nothing, and the hallway felt larger than it had 30 seconds ago, and smaller at the same time. Bakugo went to Recovery Girl the next day. His hand healed. But something behind his eyes changed. Something fundamental. He never approached Izuku Midoriya again. He gave him a wide berth in the halls and flinched when their eyes met. And whenever someone asked why, Bakugo's right hand would tremble, and he'd shove it in his pocket and say nothing. The other students noticed. They always noticed when the king stopped roaring. Whispers spread through the school. "Bakugo's scared of someone? The quirkless kid? How? Why?" And the answers never came, because the only people who knew what happened in that hallway were 4 boys, and 3 of them refused to talk about it, and the 4th had no reason to. That was the day the king of the classroom abdicated his throne. He just didn't have the guts to say it out loud. Middle school came and went like weather. Izuku grew taller, wider, harder. By 14, he was 6 feet tall with shoulders like a bull and a chest that strained every shirt his mother bought him. His green hair was wild, untamed, pushed back from his face in a mane that made him look like something between a man and an animal. A creature wearing a student's uniform the way a wolf might wear a collar, temporarily and with no intention of keeping it on. His jawline could cut glass. His eyes, still that bright, disarming green, held a depth behind them that made adults uncomfortable for reasons they couldn't name. Teachers called on him in class and felt their voices thin out. Cashiers handed him change and pulled their hands back faster than usual. Strangers on the train gave him space. All of them. Every time. Even the ones who weren't looking at him. He was quirkless, and the world pitied him, and he could have folded a car in half with his bare hands. Nobody knew. Nobody at school understood what sat in the back row of their classroom, filling out math tests and eating bento boxes the size of a suitcase. The teacher saw a large, silent boy with perfect grades and 0 disciplinary issues and assumed he would amount to something average. They could be forgiven for the assumption. They'd never met anything like him before. Nobody alive had. Bakugo knew. Bakugo looked at Izuku Midoriya across the classroom every day and saw the only thing in the world that truly scared him. And he hated it more than he hated being weak. And he could never ever say a word about it because the words would require admitting what his body already knew. That the quirkless boy in the back of the room was the most dangerous thing he had ever stood near. And the gap between them was growing every single day. Then came the sludge villain. It happened on an overcast afternoon in the commercial district. Izuku was walking home from school, hands in his pockets, mind on what to eat for dinner. He was thinking about mackerel. His body had been craving fish all week. The salt, the oil, the omega-3s. His muscles communicated their needs through cravings, and he had learned to listen. The sewer grate behind him exploded. A tower of green-brown slime erupted from the ground and engulfed the street. People screamed. Cars swerved. The sludge villain, a mid-tier criminal made of living sewage, rose up like a wave of toxic garbage and grabbed the first person it could find. It grabbed Bakugo Katsuki. Bakugo had been walking 30 meters behind Izuku. He'd been keeping his distance, as always. Now he was encased in slime up to his neck, his arms pinned, his quirk firing off wild explosions that did nothing because you can't blow up liquid. His face was purple, his eyes were bulging, he was drowning in filth, and the explosions that had once made him a king were popping uselessly inside a body that absorbed them like a sponge absorbs water. Heroes arrived. Kamui Woods, Death Arms, Mount Lady. They stood at the perimeter and assessed. They strategized. They talked about containment and collateral damage and how the villain's body type made physical intervention risky. They looked heroic. They did nothing. Bakugo choked. His explosions got weaker. His face was turning blue. His eyes, wild, panicked, searching, found Izuku in the crowd. For one horrible second, the boy who had once called Izuku nothing looked at him with the unmistakable expression of someone begging. Izuku stopped walking. He turned around. He looked at the scene. He looked at the heroes standing behind their line, doing nothing useful. He looked at Bakugo Katsuki suffocating in a sewer monster's body. He felt nothing for Bakugo. 0 sympathy. 0 connection. But something in his blood responded to the scene. The same primal signal that Yujiro Hanma had answered 10,000 times across a life that had ended before this one began. The signal wasn't heroism. It wasn't compassion. It was dominance. Something weak and disgusting had planted itself in his path. That was the only reason he needed. Izuku walked forward. "Kid, get back behind the..." He raised both hands above his head, his fingers spread wide. His back muscles flexed beneath his uniform, and for a single instant the fabric stretched over something that moved like a face. A twisting, screaming impression in the muscle that was there and then gone so fast that anyone who saw it would spend the rest of the day trying to convince themselves they hadn't. He brought his hands together. The clap. A wall of compressed air blasted forward from the impact point. The shockwave hit the sludge villain like a freight train made of sound. The slime body didn't splatter, it evaporated. The water content in the villain's form vaporized instantly from the pressure and friction. The remaining solid matter scattered across 3 city blocks like confetti made of sewage, but that was secondary. The primary effect was the sonic boom. It cracked the pavement in a straight line from Izuku's palms to the building at the end of the street. It blew out every window within 100 meters. It knocked Death Arms off his feet. The man weighed 130 kilograms in his hero gear, and he went down like a bowling pin. It threw Mount Lady, in her 60-foot form, 2 steps backward. Her heels gouged trenches in the asphalt. It peeled the clouds apart above the commercial district and left a visible hole in the overcast sky, a circle of blue in a field of gray, like the heavens had blinked. The sound hit like a detonation. People 3 blocks away ducked. Car alarms screamed in every direction. A news helicopter circling the scene was pushed sideways by the turbulence and nearly hit a building before the pilot corrected and climbed, shouting words into his headset that would be bleeped on the evening broadcast. Bakugo Katsuki dropped to the wet pavement, gasping, covered in residue. Alive. The street was silent. The kind of silence that follows a natural disaster, the stunned, ear-ringing vacancy where sound used to be. Heroes stood motionless. Civilians stood motionless. The news cameras, 3 of them, all broadcasting live, stood motionless. Every lens was pointed at the teenager in the school uniform who had just altered the weather with a hand clap. Izuku lowered his hands. His expression was blank. Bored, almost, but that word implied he had ever been interested. He looked at the crater where the villain had been. He looked at the sky he'd split open. He looked at the heroes staring at him with their mouths open and their legs shaking. Pathetic, he said. He aimed it at all of them, then he turned around and walked away. Kamui Woods took a step forward. He raised his hand to say something. Stop. Wait, young man. And then he lowered it. Something in his body told him that stopping what he'd just seen was about as possible as stopping the tide. Death Arms, who was sitting on the pavement where the shockwave had put him, looked up at the retreating figure and said to nobody in particular, "What the hell was that kid?" Nobody answered. Because nobody knew, the footage aired on every news channel in Japan within the hour. A 14-year-old boy, a school uniform, a single clap, and the sky splitting open. The comment sections erupted. Social media caught fire. Hashtags trended. Sludge villain clap. Who is this kid? Muscle hero. The internet did what the internet always does. It found the truth faster than any official body could suppress it. Within 48 hours, someone identified him. Midoriya Izuku. Aldera Jr. High. Listed quirk? None. That last detail broke the internet in half. Toshinori Yagi saw the whole thing. He was standing on a rooftop 3 buildings over, already in his weakened form, blood on his chin, timer ticking down on the embers of One for All. He had been searching for the sludge villain, the same one that had escaped him earlier that day. His failure, his mess to clean up. A 14-year-old boy had cleaned it up with a hand clap. Toshinori vaulted down from the rooftop. He chased the boy. He caught up. Barely, because the boy walked fast and with a stride that covered ground like a predator on patrol in an alley behind a convenience store. "Young man," Toshinori called. Izuku stopped. He turned. He looked at the skinny, hollow-cheeked man wheezing in the alley entrance, and his eyes moved over the skeletal frame, the sunken eyes, the blood-flecked mouth. He recognized him immediately. Every person on Earth knew All Might's true form as a secret. Izuku Midoriya knew it the way a predator knows another predator's limp. By instinct, by the way the body carried its damage, by the faint tremor in the knees that said this man is running on fumes. All Might, Izuku said. A statement, a weather report. Toshinori flinched. Then he straightened. Then he bulked up, muscle expanding, height increasing, the number 1 hero standing in the alley in his full golden form with his trademark smile. "I saw what you did back there, young man. That was extraordinary." It was boring. All Might blinked. The smile held, but something behind it shifted. "Your power? What quirk was that? I've never seen anything." "I'm quirkless." Silence. All Might's smile wobbled. "That's impossible. It's reality." Izuku turned to face him fully. At 14, he was already eye level with All Might's true form. In the hero's muscled state, All Might had 3 inches on him. Barely. What do you want? Toshinori studied the boy. The presence, the absolute absence of intimidation. This child was looking at the symbol of peace, the way a mountain looks at a bird sitting on its peak. Aware of it, unbothered by it, capable of shaking it off whenever it chose. I want to offer you something, All Might said. A power called One for All. It's been passed down through generations. It grants the user incredible strength and the accumulated power of every previous holder. With it, you could become the greatest hero the world has ever. I don't need a borrowed parlor trick. The words cut through All Might's pitch like a blade through smoke. Clean, final, absolute. I am already the pinnacle of evolution. Izuku held All Might's gaze. The hero's smile died. He found it, the thing behind those green eyes, the ancient primal certainty that made Yujiro Hanma into a creature that nations feared. This wasn't arrogance. Arrogance required insecurity. This was just truth. The same way gravity is truth. The same way a mountain doesn't argue for its own height. When I decide to become the strongest, Izuku said, it won't be because someone handed me a gift. It will be because I already was. He walked past All Might. Their shoulders almost touched. The air between them was heavy. All Might stood alone in the alley. His muscle form deflated. Blood trickled from his mouth. His hands were trembling. And Toshinori Yagi, the symbol of peace, the man who had fought all for one and won, realized with a creeping certainty that for the first time in 30 years, he had met someone who made him feel small. He stood in that alley for a long time after the boy left. He never offered One for All again. The UA entrance exam was held on a Saturday morning in February. 10,000 applicants, one institution, the most prestigious hero academy in Japan, maybe the world. Every aspiring hero in the country dreamed of passing through those gates. Most would fail. The acceptance rate was less than 1 in 300. For those who made it, UA was the beginning of everything. Izuku Midoriya walked through the gates like he owned the building. He wore a tight black compression shirt that stretched across his torso like body paint. Every muscle was visible. The trapezius, the deltoids, the pectorals, the obliques, all of it carved and defined through a decade of self-imposed physical evolution. His green hair was pushed back, wild, thick, catching the morning light. His jawline threw shadows. His arms hung at his sides, loose, heavy, each one thicker than the thighs of half the applicants around him. People stared. Of course they did. A girl with brown hair and round cheeks, Uraraka Ochako, nearly tripped on the path leading to the main building. She caught herself, looked up, and locked eyes with Izuku as he passed. Her brain stalled. She opened her mouth to say something, excuse me or hi, or are you also here for the exam? And instead she just made a sound that was somewhere between a squeak and a gasp. Izuku kept walking. A tall boy with glasses and rigid posture, Ida Tenya, saw him from across the courtyard and stopped mid-stride. His hand, already raised to adjust his glasses, froze in the air. He stared. He'd grown up in a hero family. He'd seen pro heroes up close his entire life. He'd never seen a person his age with a physique like that. His brain tried to categorize what he was looking at and returned an error. A boy with half-white, half-red hair stood near the entrance. Todoroki Shoto, son of Endeavor. He saw Izuku walk past. His mismatched eyes tracked the movement. Something in his gut tightened. His right side pulsed with cold. His left side, the fire side, the side he'd chained shut years ago, flickered. Involuntary, instinctive. A reaction to a presence his body recognized before his mind could. Izuku kept walking. Inside the auditorium, Present Mike gave his standard introduction. The written exam was first. Izuku completed it in 20 minutes and spent the remaining 40 with his eyes closed and his arms crossed, breathing like a man asleep. The proctors exchanged looks. Two of them started to approach and then thought better of it. Then came the practical. Present Mike explained the robots. 1-pointers, 2-pointers, 3-pointers. Destroy as many as you can. The 0-pointer, a massive multi-story machine, was to be avoided at all costs. It was an obstacle, a hazard, a giant metal monster meant to test the student's ability to flee. Izuku heard the word flee and his lip curled. Just barely. The first expression he'd made all day, the gates opened, the examinees sprinted. Explosions of quirks lit the artificial cityscape. Fire, lightning, acid, hardening, speed. Chaos erupted as 10 applicants scrambled for every available target. Kids crashed into each other. Robots fell in sparking heaps. The air filled with smoke and the smell of ozone and the screaming of teenagers who had never been in a real fight, trying to pretend they had. Izuku walked. His pace was measured, unhurried. His hands stayed in his pockets. His eyes swept the streets like he was window shopping in a district that bored him. A three-pointer rolled around the corner. Its sensor locked on him. Its cannon arm whirred and aimed. The red targeting light settled on his chest. Izuku pulled one hand from his pocket. He flicked a chunk of loose concrete from the ground with his foot, caught it at waist height, and snapped it forward with a lazy backhand. The chunk left his hand and broke the sound barrier. The sonic crack echoed through the city block like a gunshot. The concrete tore through the robot's center mass and exited through the back wall of the building behind it, leaving a fist-sized hole in the machine and a building-sized problem for the observation team. The robot collapsed. Sparks flew. Smoke rose. A three-pointer, gone in a flick. Izuku put his hand back in his pocket and kept walking. 3 more robots appeared at the next intersection. He kicked a manhole cover off the street without slowing down. The iron disc frisbeed through all 3 machines in a horizontal arc, bisecting each one at the midsection. The top halves slid off the bottom halves in clean diagonal cuts. Oil sprayed across the pavement like black rain. 6 robots bunched together at the end of the boulevard. Izuku stomped the ground. The street cratered beneath his foot. A shockwave rippled through the asphalt and launched the machines upward from the displaced earth, tumbling like toys. They crashed into each other midair, tangled, and fell in a heap of twisted metal that blocked the entire road. He stepped over the wreckage. From the observation room, the UA faculty watched on a wall of monitors. Recovery Girl had her hand over her mouth. Her eyes were wide behind her visor. She had been the school's healer for decades. She had seen students do incredible things. She had never seen a student destroy exam robots the way a grown man kicks through a sandcastle. Principal Nezu's permanent smile had shifted into something more complex. His small eyes tracked the green-haired boy on screen 7 with the focus of a chess player who had just spotted a piece that should be on a different board entirely. His paws were folded on the console. His tail twitched. "Who is this student?" Nezu asked. Midnight checked the roster. Midoriya Izuku, Aldera Junior High, listed quirk, none. None? Ectoplasm leaned forward. Then what are we watching? Nobody answered. On screen, Izuku was walking through the exam city like a man taking an evening stroll through a war zone that existed beneath his notice. Present Mike, who was handling live commentary from a broadcast booth, had gone silent for the first time in his professional career. His co-commentator, Vlad King, looked at him. Present Mike's jaw was hanging open. The microphone was live. Dead air. Something that had never happened in any broadcast Predfries Present Mike had ever touched. Vlad King said. Should we... What the hell was that? Present Mike screamed into the mic so loud the speakers in the exam city crackled. Examinee 2801 just destroyed 6 bots with a stomp. A stomp. He doesn't even have a quirk listed on his file. What is happening? In the exam city, students stopped fighting. They turned toward the column of dust rising from the street where Izuku was walking. They didn't know what was happening. They just knew something terrifying was over there, and they needed to be anywhere else. Uraraka Ochako was crouched behind a fallen robot, panting, her fingers sore from using her zero-gravity quirk. She had earned 28 points. Decent. Survivable. She was going to be okay. Then the ground shook. The zero-pointer emerged from behind the skyline like a building standing up. Its treads crushed entire streets. Its shadow swallowed 4 city blocks. Dust billowed from its tracks like a sandstorm. Every examinee within visual range did exactly what Present Mike had instructed them to do. They ran. Uraraka ran. Her foot caught on a piece of rubble. She fell. Her ankle twisted. Pain shot up her leg. She tried to stand and couldn't. The ankle was swelling already. She could feel it puffing inside her shoe. She looked up. The zero-pointer bore down on her. Its treads chewed the pavement. The vibration made her teeth rattle. It was the size of a building. It was getting bigger. Her shadow disappeared beneath its shadow. She closed her eyes. The vibration stopped. She opened her eyes. Izuku Midoriya was standing between her and the robot. He was looking up at the machine, this building-sized monument to everything UA thought was terrifying, and his expression was annoyed. like someone had put an ugly piece of furniture in his walking path and he was deciding whether to go around it or through it. He chose through. He crouched, his legs coiled. The ground beneath his feet compressed and splintered into a web of cracks that spread outward in every direction. His back muscles surged against his shirt, and for a split second, through the fabric, Uraraka saw something move. Something with a face. Something that screamed in silence from between his shoulder blades. She blinked. It was gone. But the afterimage stayed burned into her retinas like a camera flash. Izuku launched. He went up. Straight up. The air split around him with a sound like tearing fabric. The buildings on either side of the street shuddered as the pressure wave from his jump rolled outward. Windows cracked. Lampposts bent. A car, parked half a block away, flipped onto its side from the wind alone. He reached the zero-pointer's head in under a second. He was 100 meters in the air, silhouetted against the sky, looking down at the machine's sensor array, its cameras, its armor plating, its absolute inadequacy. He raised his right leg above his head. His hamstring stretched, his hip rotated, his entire body became a single line of force. Heel at the top, like an executioner's blade, he brought the axe kick down, his heel hit the top of the zero-pointer's head. The impact was total, complete, final. The machine split. From the crown downward, a crack raced through the robot's body like lightning through a tree. The crack widened. Metal screamed, the sound of 100 tons of steel being torn apart along a line that physics said shouldn't exist. Sparks erupted in geysers from every joint and seam. The two halves of the zero-pointer peeled apart, left and right, and fell away from each other like a fruit being torn open by something that considered it a snack. The halves hit the ground. 2 impacts, 2 earthquakes, 2 clouds of dust that merged into a single mushroom cloud over the exam site. The artificial city shook. Buildings tilted. The pavement cracked in rings that spread outward from the crash sites like ripples in concrete water. The shockwave from the kick itself, separate from the collapse, radiated outward in a perfect circle. Every standing structure within 200 meters tilted. The artificial street buckled upward in a ring. Debris launched into the air and formed a column of dust and steel fragments that rose 50 meters before the wind caught it and spread it across the exam city like ash. In the observation room, the monitors flickered. The main screen, the one showing the zero-pointer's live feed, went to static. Then every screen died. The observation windows, 3 inches of reinforced glass designed to withstand Quirk-powered impacts, spiderwebbed from edge to edge. 2 panels fell inward and hit the floor in a cascade of fragments. Glass skittered across the observation room floor. An alarm went off. Then 2 more. Recovery girl fainted. She went stiff. Her eyes rolled back and she dropped out of her chair. Midnight caught her. Midnight, who was an R-rated hero known for her unshakable composure, caught Recovery Girl while her own hands were trembling so hard she almost dropped the old woman twice. Present Mike had stopped talking. His microphone was still live. The Exam City speakers broadcasted nothing except the sound of a grown man breathing too fast. Vlad King stared at the blank screens. Was that? Did he just... He cut it in half, Ectoplasm said. His voice was flat, still loading. With his leg. Cementos had both hands on the console. His knuckles were white. The structural damage to the Exam City is... I'll need to see it. I need to see it in person before I can even begin to. The seismograph, Snipe said from the back of the room. He was pointing at a secondary display that was still functioning. Look at the seismograph. They looked. The needle had gone off the chart. The line it drew looked like a heartbeat. One massive spike, followed by a series of aftershocks, followed by nothing. Principal Nezu was the only one still seated. His small hands were folded in his lap. His eyes were fixed on the dead monitors, and the reflections of the blank screens filled his pupils like empty windows. Midoriya Izuku, Nezu said softly. Quirkless. He smiled. It was the smile of a creature who had just found the most interesting variable in a very boring equation. Down in the Exam City, the dust began to clear. Students emerged from cover, coughing, blinking, stumbling over rubble. The wreckage of the zero-pointer lay in 2 halves, each one the size of a small building, smoke pouring from every seam. The street between the halves was a crater. The buildings along the boulevard leaned inward like they were bowing. In the center of it all, Izuku Midoriya landed. He dropped from the sky and hit the ground in a crouch that cratered the pavement beneath him. He stood up. He rolled his neck. He looked at the destruction around him like a man inspecting a room he'd already forgotten. Uraraka Ochako sat on the ground 10 meters away. Her ankle throbbed, her eyes were wider than dinner plates. Her brain had stopped working approximately 30 seconds ago and showed zero signs of rebooting. She was staring at the figure in the center of the devastation, the way ancient humans stared at lightning, with awe, terror, and the distant understanding that they were looking at something beyond their ability to explain. Izuku looked at her. He studied her for half a second. She was cute, round face, brown hair, wide eyes full of something between terror and worship. Her build was soft. He walked over. He extended his hand. She stared at it. "Your ankle," he said. "Can you stand?" She took his hand. His grip was warm. His palm was calloused like sandstone. He pulled her upright as if she weighed nothing, because to him, she did. She weighed less than the concrete he'd been flicking at robots. "Thank you," Uraraka stammered. "That was you. You made rice balls today," Izuku said. "I can smell them in your bag. I want one." "What? A rice ball? I'm hungry." Uraraka stared at him. She had just watched this person bisect a 100-foot robot with a kick, and now he was asking about the lunch she'd packed for the train ride home. Her brain tried to reconcile these two realities and failed spectacularly. She reached into her bag, pulled out a wrapped rice ball, and handed it to him with both hands like an offering at a shrine. "Thank you," Izuku said. He bit into it. He chewed. He nodded once. "Good." He walked away, eating. Behind him, the zero-pointer's wreckage groaned and collapsed further into itself. Uraraka watched him go. Her heart was doing something she would spend the next 3 months trying to understand. Her ankle still hurt. She barely noticed. The results were posted the following week. Izuku Midoriya scored the highest practical exam result in UA history. The exact number was redacted from every public document, internal memo, and faculty briefing. Principal Nezu personally replaced it with a single word in the official records. The word was infinity. The first day at UA started with Aizawa Shuta standing in front of Class 1A wearing a sleeping bag and a face that said he would rather be anywhere else. 20 students sat in neat rows. Future heroes. The best of the best of the best. Every one of them had fought and bled for their seat. Most of them carried quirks that could level a building, reshape matter, or defy the basic laws of the universe. Izuku Midoriya sat in the back row with his arms crossed and his legs extended under the desk in front of him because his frame was too large for the standard seating arrangement. His black shirt was tight. His arms were folded like twin anvils across his chest. He looked like a lion that had been placed in a kindergarten and was deciding how long to stay amused. Bakugo Katsuki sat 3 rows ahead. He had spotted Izuku when he walked in. His face had gone white. His right hand, the same hand that had been crushed 4 years ago, disappeared into his pocket. He faced forward and stayed that way. Aizawa explained the Quirk assessment test. 8 events. Physical challenges, standard hero metrics. The student who performed worst would be expelled. "Your previous lives of 0 consequences are over," Aizawa said, his eyes scanning the room. "This is the reality of heroism. If you can't cut it, you'll be sent home." 20 students tensed, 19 of them anyway. They filed outside. The field was open. The sun was high. Aizawa held up a softball and pointed at the throwing circle. "Bakugo, you had the highest entrance exam score besides one outlier. What was your best softball throw in junior high?" Bakugo stepped into the circle. 67 meters. His voice was tight. His hands crackled with small explosions. "Throw it with your quirk." Bakugo wound up and launched the ball with an explosion that sent it screaming across the field, trailing smoke and fire. 705 meters, Aizawa read. The class murmured. "Impressive." Several students nodded. Yaoyorozu wrote it down. Midoriya. Izuku stood up from where he'd been leaning against the fence. He walked to the circle. The class watched him. Half of them had heard rumors about the entrance exam. Half of them had seen the crater in the exam city firsthand. All of them were trying to figure out what they were looking at. Aizawa handed him the ball. Their eyes met. Aizawa's quirk, Erasure, activated on reflex. His eyes glowed red, his hair floated, his binding cloth twitched and lifted from his shoulders. It was instinct, pure, undiluted survival instinct. Something about the boy standing in front of him tripped every alarm his body had ever developed in 20 years of underground hero work. Izuku felt the erasure lock onto him, a sensation like eyes pressing against his skin, searching, probing, looking for a quirk to suppress, finding nothing. He laughed. It was a deep, easy sound, the kind of sound a large animal makes when it's comfortable. It rolled across the field and every student heard it, and most of them took a step back without meaning to. Mineta stepped behind Shoji. Kaminari grabbed Jiru's arm. Jiru was too focused on the sound to push him off. "You're glaring at me, Eraserhead," Izuku said. He held the softball up between two fingers. "Does it hurt your eyes to look at a god?" Aizawa's erasure was active, full power. His eyes burned. Every quirk in range was suppressed. Every student on the field felt it. The faint pressure of having their abilities dampened. Izuku Midoriya didn't have a quirk. The realization hit Aizawa like a wall. This boy had nothing to erase. His power was physical, inherent, woven into his muscle and bone and blood. Aizawa's strongest weapon, his entire career identity, the tool that had made him one of the most feared underground heroes in Japan, was completely, utterly, fundamentally useless against the thing standing 5 meters in front of him. He deactivated his erasure. His hair fell. His eyes stopped glowing. For a moment, he looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. Izuku stepped into the circle. He held the ball in his right hand. He inhaled. His chest expanded. His muscle locked. Every fiber in his arm, his shoulder, his core, his legs, his back, everything aligned into a single vector of force. He threw. The ball left his hand and broke the sound barrier before it crossed the 20-meter line. The sonic crack hit the class like a slap. Several students stumbled. Jiro screamed and covered her ears. Her earphone jacks made every sound louder, and this sound was a detonation. Kaminari ducked. Mineta fell over. Ashido grabbed onto Kirishima, who was the only person still standing upright, and even he was bracing against the wind. The ball kept going. It climbed. It became a dot. It became nothing. The trail it left behind was a line of superheated air, a streak of white in the blue sky that glowed for a full 3 seconds before the heat dissipated. The sky above the throwing field had a visible scar in it, a line burned into the atmosphere by a softball. The machine beeped. Everyone looked at the display. Infinity. The same word, the same impossible reading. The device hadn't tracked the ball because the ball no longer existed. Air friction had incinerated it somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. The machine, unable to calculate a final resting distance for an object that had been reduced to atoms, defaulted to the only answer that made sense: infinity. The class stared at the display, then at Izuku, then at the display, then at Izuku again. That's impossible, Yaoyorozu Momo whispered. She was the class's top academic student. Her creation quirk required an understanding of molecular structure. She understood physics. She understood what she was looking at. And she understood that it should be impossible, and the gap between those two truths was making her dizzy. She was holding her notebook, and the pen in her hand was shaking. A human arm can't generate that much velocity. The tendons would snap, the shoulder would dislocate, the bones would fracture from the... "That was so manly!" Kirishima Eijiro shouted, his face split between a massive grin and genuine terror. "But how? How did he... The ball is gone! It's just gone!" "He incinerated the ball," Todoroki Shoto said from the back of the group. His voice was even. His mismatched eyes were locked on Izuku. The fire inside his left side, the flame he had sworn never to use, flickered involuntarily. His body was responding to something his mind was still processing. Ida Tenya adjusted his glasses with a hand that refused to stay steady. "The device must be malfunctioning. There's simply..." "It's accurate," Aizawa said. His voice was flat. His eyes were their normal color. He was staring at the readout with the expression of a man who had just been informed that gravity had been optional this entire time and nobody had told him. "The ball is gone." Izuku walked out of the circle. Bakugo snapped. It was inevitable. The rage that had been building since the entrance exam, since the hallway 4 years ago, since the moment a quirkless boy had crushed his hand and whispered a promise into his ear, all of it reached critical mass at once. "Midoriya!" he charged. Explosions fired from both palms. His face was twisted with 4 years of suppressed rage, humiliation, fear, all of it compressed into a single screaming attack aimed at the back of Izuku's head. He was fast. His quirk made him fast. He crossed the distance in seconds. Izuku turned. He backhanded Bakugo one motion, open palm, effortless speed. The same way someone swats a fly. Reflexive, thoughtless, absolute. The impact launched Bakugo off his feet. He traveled 40 meters in a flat horizontal line, fast enough that his uniform caught fire from air friction. He hit the concrete wall at the edge of the testing field and embedded into it. His body left an impression in the stone, arms out, legs spread, head back, a perfect Bakugo-shaped dent, 2 inches deep. Dust rained from the impact point. Bakugo was unconscious before he touched the wall. His eyes were rolled back. His arms hung limp. The explosions in his palms sputtered once and died. The field went silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. 20 pairs of eyes stared at the Bakugo-shaped indent in the concrete wall and tried to process the fact that the strongest quirk user in their class had been put through a wall by a backhand. An open palm half-speed, barely trying backhand from a boy who hadn't even turned all the way around. Izuku looked at the dent. He looked at Bakugo's limp form. He said one sentence. Weaklings should stay on the ground. He walked to the next testing station. Nobody followed him for 6 full seconds. They were too busy trying to remember how to breathe. Aizawa stood with the data tablet in his hand. He looked at the Bakugo-shaped indent in the wall. He looked at the word infinity on the softball display. He looked at the 16-year-old walking away without a scratch, without a sweat, without a single elevated heartbeat. For the first time in years, Aizawa Shota genuinely did not know what to do. He did not expel anyone that day. After class, he went to Principal Nezu's office. He sat down. He said 4 words. "What have we enrolled?" Nezu sipped his tea. Steam curled between his paws. "Greatness, Aizawa-kun, or something far worse. We'll see." The first week at UA set the tone for everything that followed. Izuku dominated every exercise, every drill, every simulation. He broke the records for every physical metric the school tracked, and several it didn't. He completed the obstacle courses by walking through the obstacles, walls, pits, barriers, treating each one like a mild inconvenience in his commute. He sparred against training robots and reduced them to scrap with single blows. He grappled against Aizawa's binding cloth and snapped it like thread. Aizawa requisitioned new cloth 3 times in the first week and stopped writing up the expense reports because the paperwork was becoming embarrassing. The class adjusted. Slowly. Painfully. The way any ecosystem adjusts when a new apex predator is introduced, with fear first, then distance, then the slow, reluctant process of figuring out how to exist in the same space without being consumed. Kirishima Eijiro was the first to approach him. Kirishima's hardening quirk made him the toughest person in the class. Tough enough, at least, to tank a friendly shoulder bump without hospitalization. He walked up to Izuku during lunch on the 3rd day, sat down across from him, and said, "Dude, you're the most insane person I've ever met, and I think that's awesome." Izuku looked at him. He chewed his food, an entire roasted chicken, bone-in. "You harden your skin." "Yeah, it's my quirk. Check it out." Kirishima activated his hardening on one arm. The skin turned jagged and stone-like. He held it up proudly. Izuku reached over and flicked Kirishima's hardened forearm with his index finger. The hardening cracked. Kirishima yelped. A web of fractures spread across his arm surface like a windshield hit by a rock. He deactivated the quirk, clutching his forearm. It wasn't broken, he was tougher than that, but the hardening itself had been cracked like cheap ceramic by a flick. A flick. "Train harder," Izuku said. "Your body has potential. You waste it by relying on a quirk alone. Muscle is everything." Kirishima stared at his arm. Then he stared at Izuku. Then he grinned. A wide, unshakable, slightly manic grin. "You're right. You're totally right. I've been slacking on raw physical training." "Dude, you're like a walking motivational poster. A terrifying motivational poster. The kind of motivational poster that could kill you." Izuku returned to his chicken. That was the extent of their bonding. But from that day forward, Kirishima could be seen in the gym at 5 a.m. every morning, lifting weights with a manic determination that confused his classmates and alarmed the faculty. When asked why, he would say, "Midoriya flicked my arm and it cracked. Flicked it. I need to be harder. I need to be so much harder." Todoroki Shoto watched from a distance, always watching. His eyes tracked Izuku across every room, every field, every corridor. He said nothing. He approached nothing. But the ice on his right side grew thicker with each passing day, and the flame on his left side burned hotter. And he could feel both responding to the presence in Class 1A that his body recognized as something it could never, ever match. And the feeling of being outclassed was both familiar and entirely new at the same time. Yaoyorozu took notes. Detailed, obsessive, scientific notes. She filled 3 notebooks in the first week alone, documenting every observable physical feat, every measured output, every impossibility. Her conclusion, written at the bottom of the 3rd notebook in shaking handwriting, read, "This defies everything we understand about the human body. Either the laws of physics are wrong, or Midoriya Izuku is." Uraraka brought him food every day. She never said why. She just appeared at his desk with wrapped rice balls, or onigiri, or sometimes homemade katsu sandwiches. She handed them over, stammered something incomprehensible, turned red, and fled. Izuku accepted every meal. He ate every bite. He said good each time. It was the closest thing to a friendship he had in the class, and it was built entirely on carbohydrates and mutual confusion. Bakugo recovered in the nurse's office after 2 days. He came back to class with a stiff neck, a bruised ego, and a permanent expression that said he was one bad day away from either a breakdown or an evolution. He sat in his seat. He faced forward. He spoke to nobody. When his eyes drifted toward Izuku, his right hand trembled, and he shoved it under his desk and clenched it until the knuckles turned white. This was the ecosystem now. One predator. 19 prey animals learning to coexist with it. And then the real trouble started. The air hunt, as the internet would later call it, began on a Thursday afternoon during a joint training exercise supervised by several pro heroes. Midnight, the R-rated hero, Kayama Nomuri, was overseeing the session. She stood at the edge of the field in her hero costume, whip in hand, watching the students run drills. Izuku finished his drill in a quarter of the time allotted. He walked to the sideline. He stood next to Midnight. He was taller than her by 3 inches. His shadow fell over her. "Kayama-sensei," he said. Midnight turned. She was a woman accustomed to attention. Her entire hero identity was built on being provocative, fearless, and in complete command of every room she entered. She looked up at the 16-year-old student standing beside her, and something behind her composure cracked. "Yes, Midoriya, you have a strong quirk. Your physical conditioning is above average for a pro hero. Your pain tolerance is visible in how you carry old injuries. You would produce exceptional offspring." Midnight's whip fell out of her hand. It hit the ground and coiled at her feet like a dead snake. "Excuse me?" "I'm evaluating you," Izuku said, sped, as if he were reading a grocery list. "For the future of my bloodline, you meet several criteria." The field went very, very still. Every student within earshot stopped moving. Kaminari's brain short-circuited. Actual sparks popped off his temples. Mineta burst a blood vessel in his right eye. Jiru's earphone jacks went rigid. Sero's elbows went limp, and he dropped the tape he'd been stretching. Ashido covered her mouth with both hands. Asui said, "Ribbit?" in a tone that implied the word carried a paragraph of subtext. Midnight stared at Izuku Midoriya. She was a grown woman, a licensed pro hero, a teacher at the most prestigious academy in Japan. She had been hit on by criminals, fellow heroes, celebrities, and at least 2 heads of state. Nothing in her career had prepared her for a 16-year-old student looking her dead in the eye and telling her she met his breeding criteria, with the sincerity of a tax filing. "Midoriya," she said, and her voice was higher than usual by at least an octave. "That is incredibly inappropriate." "I understand." Izuku nodded once. "You're declining." "Noted." He walked away. Midnight stood rooted to the spot. Her face was 3 shades of red. Her hand was trembling where it hung at her side. Aizawa appeared beside her like a shadow. "Did he just... Don't." "He did. I said don't." The rumor spread through UA like wildfire in dry brush. By dinner, every student in every department knew that the monster in Class 1A had propositioned a teacher. By the next morning, the faculty had held an emergency meeting about it. By the end of the week, it had leaked to the pro-hero community, and the story was being whispered in agencies across the country. But the real moment, the one that would define the air hunt in the public consciousness, came 2 weeks later, during a citywide rescue operation that all first-year students were required to observe. A building collapse in downtown Musutafu. Multiple civilians trapped. Every available hero responded. The students watched from a secured perimeter. Textbook field observation exercise. Nothing was supposed to happen. Mirko arrived. The rabbit hero, Usagiyama Rumi, was everything the Hanma bloodline respected. She fought alone. She relied on her body. Her legs could crack steel beams. She charged into danger the way other people charged their phones. Instinctively, habitually, and with zero hesitation. She was the number 5 hero in Japan, and she had earned every inch of that ranking with kicks that could reshape geography. She punched through the building's collapsed wall with one blow. She pulled 3 civilians out in 30 seconds. She carried a support beam on her shoulders while rescue workers extracted a family of 4. She was fast, brutal, efficient, and unrelentingly physical. Izuku watched from the perimeter. His eyes tracked her the way a hawk tracks movement. Total focus, zero distraction. He watched her legs, he watched how she pivoted, he watched the explosive power in her calves and thighs. He watched, and the Hanma blood inside him recognized something it had been looking for. After the rescue, Mirko was walking toward the hero staging area, cracking her neck, dusting concrete from her skin. The students were being ushered back to the bus. Izuku jumped the perimeter barrier. "Hey!" a supervisor shouted. "Midoriya, get back!" He ignored them. He walked straight to Mirko. The pro hero turned. She was 5'2", compact muscle from ears to toes with rabbit ears that twitched as he approached. She looked up at the teenager walking toward her with the stride of something that feared nothing in the world. "Who the hell are you?" Mirko asked. "Midoriya Izuku, UA first year." "Cool. Get lost, kid. You have strong legs, rabbit." Izuku stopped 2 meters from her. He looked down at her. His expression held zero humor and absolute sincerity. "You are a woman of violence. Bear my child. Give me an heir that can entertain me." The staging area went silent. Every hero, every sidekick, every police officer, every paramedic in a 50-meter radius stopped what they were doing and turned toward the voice they'd just heard. Conversations died mid-word. Tools were lowered. Coffee cups stopped halfway to lips. A first-year UA student had just told the number 5 hero to bear his children, and the universe needed a moment to process that. Mirko's ears went straight up. Her eyes went wide. Then her eyes went narrow. Then her entire body moved. She roundhouse kicked Izuku in the ribs with enough force to crack a concrete pillar. Izuku caught her ankle. He caught it one-handed, mid-swing, and his grip closed around her leg like a vice. Mirko's momentum died. Her body jerked to a stop. She hung in the air for a split second. One leg extended, the other on the ground, her entire body frozen mid-attack. And for the first time in her hero career, Rumi Usagiyama realized she could not pull her leg free. She tried. Her muscles flexed. Her thigh, calf, and ankle strained against his grip. She was the strongest kicker in Japan. Her legs could launch her 3 stories straight up. She could crack steel. His hand didn't move. It was wrapped around her ankle like it was bolted there. Like her kick, the same kick that had sent A-rank villains through buildings, had been stopped by a teenager the way a wall stops a thrown tennis ball. Izuku looked at her trapped leg with mild interest. He ran his thumb across the muscle of her calf, feeling the density, the fiber, the explosive potential stored in that limb. His expression shifted. Something like respect crossed his face. The first respect anyone had seen him show since he arrived at UA. "Impressive," he said. "Your legs are the real thing." Mirko's face had gone through 15 emotions in 3 seconds. She landed on fury. "Let go of my leg, you psycho kid!" He let go. She stumbled back. Her ears were flat against her head. Her face was red. Her chest was heaving. She was staring at him the way a wild animal stares at another wild animal that has just demonstrated a strength advantage, with rage, confusion, and something buried very deep that she would deny until the day she died. "Think about it," Izuku said. He turned around and walked back to the perimeter. The staging area erupted. Heroes shouted. Supervisors scrambled. Aizawa materialized from somewhere with murder in his eyes and his binding cloth already uncoiling. Midnight was on the phone with Nezu, speaking in a voice that was half report and half hysteria. Present Meek was laughing so hard he couldn't stand up. He was on his knees behind a police cruiser, tears streaming down his face. tap slapping the pavement. And Mirko stood where she was, watching Izuku Midoriya walk away, and her heart was beating so fast it hurt, and she would think about that in a moment every single day for the next 6 months, and she would never ever admit it to a single living soul. The internet got the footage within 24 hours. Someone's body camera. A 30-second clip. It went viral so fast that the hosting servers crashed twice. Overnight, Izuku Midoriya became the most talked about UA student in a decade, and he hadn't even debuted as a hero. The comments were volcanic. Did this kid just ask Mirko to have his babies? He caught her kick. He caught Mirko's kick. One hand. She tried to take his head off, and he said, "Impressive. I need to lie down. I need this man's confidence injected directly into my veins." He's 16. What are they feeding them at UA? Mirko looked like she wanted to kill him and kiss him at the same time, and I've never related to anything more. The air hunt became a running joke, a cultural moment, and a genuine concern for the Hero Safety Commission all at the same time. The clip was remixed, it was animated, it was turned into a meme format. Someone auto-tuned Mirko's "Let Go of My Leg" into a song that hit 1 million streams in a week. Izuku couldn't have cared less. He had planted a seed. The Hanma bloodline was patient. He had time. 3 weeks after the entrance exam, the villains came. The USJ, Unforeseen Simulation Joint, was a massive training facility built to simulate rescue operations in various disaster zones. Flood zone, fire zone, landslide zone, collapse zone. 13, the space hero, was supposed to lead the session. Aizawa was backup. It was supposed to be safe. The portal opened at 11:47 a.m. A swirling black and purple gate materialized at the center of the facility's main plaza, and from it poured the League of Villains. 63 of them, armed, quirked, and led by a pale young man with severed hands decorating his body like accessories. Shigaraki Tamura, the leader. His quirk, Decay, could disintegrate anything he touched with all 5 fingers. His skin was dry and cracked. His eyes were red. His voice was a petulant rasp. He was dangerous the way a cornered animal is dangerous. Unpredictable, vicious, and invested in nothing but destruction. Beside him stood Kurogiri, a being made of living mist whose warp gate quirk had delivered them all inside UA's most secure facility without triggering a single alarm. Behind them stood the Nomu. The Nomu was a thing, 6.5 feet tall. Its brain was exposed through an open skull cap, swollen gray tissue pulsing in the open air. Its body was a mass of engineered muscle and artificial tissue. Its eyes were empty sockets. Its beak-like mouth was frozen in a permanent snarl. It had been built for one purpose, to kill All Might. Its quirks, shock absorption and super regeneration, made it a tank that could absorb any punch and heal from any wound, the weapon that would break the symbol of peace. 13 saw them first. "Everyone get back. Those are villains," Aizawa finished. His goggles were already on. His cloth was in his hands. 13, protect the students. Don't bother. Every head turned. Izuku Midoriya stepped forward. He walked past Aizawa. He walked past 13. He walked toward the edge of the staircase that overlooked the plaza where 63 villains stood with murder in their eyes and Nomu at their center. "Midoriya, get back here," Aizawa barked. "This is a real attack. These are real villains with real..." "I know." Izuku pulled his shirt off. He grabbed the hem, pulled it over his head, and dropped it on the stairs. The movement was simple, unceremonious, like a man taking off his coat before doing yard work. The class watched. The villains watched. The facility itself seemed to hold its breath. Izuku's upper body was a roadmap of muscle that shouldn't exist on a human frame. His chest was a wall of layered tissue. His arms were weapons. Biceps and triceps carved with a definition that made anatomy textbooks look like rough drafts. His abdominals were cut into blocks of dense fiber. Every sinew was visible. Every ridge of tissue was pronounced. His body was a testament to 10 years of relentless, obsessive, superhuman training, or to something older, something that lived in the blood, something inherited from a lineage that preceded quirks and would outlast them. And then his back moved. It started between his shoulder blades. The muscles shifted, they twisted, they rose. Something underneath the skin, something that had been sleeping, woke up. The demon back. It spread across his upper body like a wave. His trapezius, his latissimus dorsi, his rhomboids, every muscle in his back swelled and reshaped until the skin formed a face. A screaming, raging, demonic face made entirely of living tissue. The eyes were hollow wells of flexed fiber. The mouth was a stretched snarl of deltoid and tricep. It looked alive. It looked hungry. It looked like it had been waiting for this exact moment to show itself. The temperature in the USJ dropped. Every villain in the plaza felt it. The predator response, that ancient limbic system alarm that fires when something higher on the food chain announces its presence. Humans are prey animals at their core, and every instinct they carry remembers what it feels like to be hunted. Every villain in that plaza felt it. The sudden, bone-deep certainty that something in the room wanted them dead and had the ability to make it happen. 3 villains bolted. They turned and ran for Kurogiri's portal without a word. 5 more followed. A 6th collapsed to his knees and vomited. The students of Class 1A stared. Uraraka had her hands over her mouth. Kirishima's jaw was on the floor. Todoroki's left side was on fire. Involuntary, unasked for. A survival response. Yaoyorozu was writing in her notebook and crying at the same time, which was a combination she hadn't known was possible. Shigaraki stared. His fingers twitched against the severed hand on his face. His red eyes were wide. What? What is that? Kurogiri's mist body flickered. Shigaraki Tomura, I am detecting something anomalous. That student's... Yeah. Shigaraki scratched his neck. Hard. Skin peeled. I see it. Izuku descended the stairs. Each step cracked the concrete beneath his foot. His body radiated heat. The demon back pulsed with every heartbeat. The face on his back breathing, snarling, alive. His green eyes were bright and flat and absolutely, completely locked onto the thing in the center of the villain formation. The Nomu. He walked across the plaza. Villains parted. Some of them moved out of his way on purpose. Others found that their legs had moved without permission, their bodies making survival decisions their brains couldn't process fast enough to override. One villain, a man with a stone fist quirk and a criminal record longer than his arm, swung at Izuku as he passed. A haymaker. Full power. The stone fist connected with Izuku's jaw. Izuku caught the fist. Crushed it. The stone crumbled. The bones underneath crumbled with it. The villain screamed. Izuku released him and kept walking. He didn't look at the man. He was already forgotten. A footnote. The Nomu stood waiting, its empty eyes locked onto the approaching figure. Its shock absorption quirk hummed through its body. It was designed to tank All Might's punches. It was the ultimate weapon. Izuku stopped 3 meters away. This is what you brought? He tilted his head. He studied the Nomu the way a person studies a specimen in a jar. It has muscle density, artificial but dense, shock absorption, regeneration. He nodded once. Fine. The Nomu attacked. It was fast, faster than anything that size should be. Its fist rocketed toward Izuku's face like a piston, driven by quirk-enhanced muscle and aimed with the single-minded purpose of a creature that existed for nothing but destruction. Izuku caught it. The shockwave from the blocked punch rippled through the plaza. Dust erupted. 3 nearby villains were thrown off their feet. The floor cracked in a starburst pattern beneath Izuku's planted feet. He held the Nomu's fist in his right hand. His arm hadn't moved from the point of contact. His muscles hadn't strained. His expression hadn't changed. Shock absorption, he repeated. That means it takes the impact and spreads it through the body. It reduces damage. He squeezed the Nomu's fist. His fingers sank into the artificial flesh. But what happens when there's nothing to absorb? He grabbed the Nomu's right arm with both hands. He planted his foot on the Nomu's chest. He pulled. The arm came off. It separated at the shoulder with a sound like wet concrete tearing apart. Tendons snapped. Artificial muscle ripped. Fibers stretched and broke. The Nomu's regeneration kicked in. Tissue began to knit. Fibers began to reconnect, and Izuku drove his knee into the healing stump and destroyed the regenerating tissue before it could complete. The Nomu staggered. It swung with its remaining arm. Izuku ducked under the blow, stepped inside its guard, and grabbed the left arm. He ripped it off too. Both arms. Gone. Discarded like branches from a tree. They hit the ground with a wet thud and twitched once and went still. The Nomu stood armless. Its regeneration was trying hard. Muscle fibers extended from both stumps like reaching fingers. Tissue bubbled. Bone began to reform. Izuku grabbed the Nomu's exposed skull with his right hand. His fingers closed around the brain casing. He lifted the creature off the ground, 600 pounds of engineered flesh suspended by its head like a puppet, and held it at eye level. "Regenerate this," he said. He brought his left hand up. He gripped the Nomu's lower jaw, one hand on the skull, one hand on the jaw. He pulled. The Nomu's head split apart, top from bottom, skull from jaw. The engineered brain tore in half. The regeneration hit a wall it could never climb. The brain itself, the source of every quirk's function, separated into two pieces that could never reconnect. The Nomu's body seized. Its legs kicked once. Its torso spasmed. It went limp. Izuku dropped the carcass at his feet. It landed in a heap of torn muscle and broken bone. The two halves of its head leaked fluid across the plaza floor in a spreading pool of black. He looked at Shigaraki. "Is this the best you have? I'm insulted." The plaza was silent. 50-something villains stood scattered across the facility. They had come here to kill All Might. They had brought a weapon specifically engineered to destroy the symbol of peace. They had planned this for months. A 16-year-old boy had torn that weapon apart with his bare hands in under 30 seconds. Shigaraki was scratching his neck so hard that blood ran down his collar. His eyes were wide. His breathing was ragged. The hand on his face, father, trembled. "Kurogiri," he whispered. "Kurogiri, we need to." "Retreating now," Kurogiri said. The mist portal expanded behind them. "Running?" Izuku said. He hadn't raised his voice. He didn't need to. The sound carried across the plaza like a verdict. "I expected villains to have more spine than heroes. I was wrong. You're all just insects with a death wish." Shigaraki locked eyes with Izuku one final time through the fingers of the hand on his face. The rage in his red eyes was palpable. The fear behind it was worse. Then the portal closed, and the League of Villains was gone. The remaining foot soldiers, the ones too slow or too stupid to follow their boss through the warp gate, looked at each other. They looked at Izuku. They looked at the mutilated remains of the Nomu at his feet. 27 of them surrendered simultaneously. They dropped their weapons, raised their hands, and knelt on the ground without a word. 12 more tried to run and were knocked unconscious by Aizawa, who had descended the stairs and had been waiting for exactly this moment. The rest simply collapsed. Fear-induced unconsciousness. Their bodies had decided independently of their brains that being awake in the presence of Izuku Midoriya was no longer a survival-compatible option. All Might arrived 4 minutes later. He burst through the main entrance in his full muscular form, fist cocked, ready for war. He found the USJ secure. He found the villains defeated. He found the students unharmed. He found the Nomu in pieces on the floor, and he found Izuku Midoriya sitting on a pile of unconscious bodies, shirt still off, demon back receded, eating a rice ball. Uraraka Ochako stood 15 meters away, her face the color of a tomato, her hands clasped in front of her. She had made the rice ball that morning. She had handed it to Izuku after the fight with trembling hands and a voice that barely qualified as audible. You, here. Rice. And then retreated to her current position where she had been standing motionless, processing. All Might stared at the scene, his smile held, his fists unclenched. His eyes swept the carnage. The crater where the Nomu had been dismantled, the surrendered villains, the unconscious ones, the broken floor, the students pressed against the far wall with expressions ranging from awe to existential crisis. "Young Midoriya," All Might said, the booming voice, the icon voice. "You seem to have handled this." "They were boring," Izuku said, chewing. "Your weapon, the Nomu, it was built to fight you. It was built wrong. Shock absorption means nothing against tearing force. Regeneration means nothing when you separate the brain." All Might's smile flickered. "You analyzed it and I didn't analyze anything. I grabbed it and ripped it apart. The rest was obvious." All Might stood in the entrance of the USJ, the greatest hero in the world, and had nothing to say. That evening, the security footage leaked. Someone, the police suspected a junior officer with a camera phone, recorded the playback of the USJ's internal cameras and uploaded a 30-second clip to HeroNet. The clip showed a shirtless teenager with green hair tearing the Nomu apart. 8 million views in 2 hours. 16 million by midnight. 40 million by the week. The most viewed clip in HeroNet history, the comments were a war zone. What did I just watch? That kid ripped its arms off. He ripped its arms off like paper. He tore the head in half. In half. I need to sit down. I need to sit down for the rest of my life. This is the same kid who asked Mirko to have his babies. What is UA producing? Forget All Might. This kid is All Might. All Might wishes he was this kid. He ate a rice ball afterwards. He ate a rice ball like it was a lunch break. I have never been so scared and so hungry at the same time. The girl who gave him the rice ball is the bravest person in this video. The Hero Safety Commission held an emergency session the following morning. The topic, Midoriya Izuku, Class 1A, UA High School. Quirkless. Threat assessment, undefined. Meeting duration, 4 hours. Conclusion, unchanged. Undefined. Unmeasured. Uncontrollable. The UA Sports Festival was the largest televised event in Japan. Every hero agency, every scout, every media outlet, every fan with a screen tuned in. The stadium held 80,000 people. Millions more watched online. The betting markets crashed 3 times. The bandwidth usage across Japan spiked to levels normally reserved for natural disasters. For the students, it was a chance to debut, to show their power, to catch the eye of a pro hero and secure their future. Izuku entered the stadium in his gym uniform. The crowd was already electric. Present Mike's voice boomed over the speakers, introducing each class. And representing Class 1A, the class that survived a real villain attack in their 3rd week. Here they come. The crowd roared. The cameras swept over the students, and then the cameras found Izuku. He walked at the back of the group. His arms were at his sides. His wild green hair caught the stadium lights. His jaw was set. His eyes scanned the crowd with the indifferent gaze of a man being shown someone else's vacation photos. The uniform stretched across his frame like it was painted on. The crowd's roar shifted. It became something between excitement and apprehension. 80,000 people looking at one person and feeling, collectively, that the outcome of this event had already been decided. The first event was the obstacle race, a 4-kilometer gauntlet through the stadium's underground course, packed with robots, chasms, minefields, and bottlenecks. Midnight gave the signal. 50 students surged forward. Todoroki moved first. He froze the ground behind him, icing the path of every student at his back. A wall of students slipped and piled up. Todoroki broke ahead, his ice carving a lane through the first robot blockade. He was fast, decisive. The favorite, Izuku walked. He walked through Todoroki's ice. It cracked beneath his feet like thin glass. He walked through the robot blockade by shouldering through the machines. 3-pointers bounced off him and crumpled against the walls. He reached the canyon zone, a massive gorge with tight ropes, and jumped. He cleared the entire gorge in one bound. The downdraft knocked 2 students off the ropes. He reached the minefield and walked through it. The mines detonated against his legs. Pink explosions popped like firecrackers. He emerged from the other side without a mark. He crossed the finish line. First place, 3 minutes ahead of second. I don't even. Present Mike coughed. Ladies and gentlemen, Midoriya Izuku has won the obstacle race by a margin that breaks every record in this event's history. The second event was the cavalry battle. Teams of 4, points on headbands. First place carried 10 million points. Izuku stood alone. Nobody wanted to team with him. They feared being near him. They feared what would happen when someone attacked. Midoriya, you need 3 more teammates, Midnight said. Gap, I am 4 people. That isn't how. Are you going to stop me? Midnight held his gaze for 1.5 seconds. She stamped the form. Team Midoriya, approved. He stood alone on the field with the 10 million headband. 6 teams converged on him, 24 students. A coordinated assault. Izuku moved through them like water through a sieve. He snatched 3 headbands in 15 seconds. The remaining teams pulled back. Nobody attacked him again. He stood in the center of the field, alone, with headbands draped over his arm, and the crowd erupted. He's a one-man cavalry team, and nobody will touch him. The tournament bracket was single elimination. 1-on-1 Dodd. First match, Shinso Hitoshi from General Studies. Brainwashing Quirk, activated by a verbal response. Hey, Midoriya, Shinso called. Must be nice, having all that power. You probably never had to. Stop talking. Izuku's voice hit the arena like a hammer. Shinso's mouth closed involuntarily. He walked forward and flicked Shinso on the forehead. The force launched the boy out of the ring and into the wall. Unconscious. Winner, Midoriya. 4 seconds, second match, Ida Tenya. Recipro burst at full power. A devastating kick aimed at Izuku's midsection. Izuku caught the kick with one hand. The engine in Ida's calf roared. Exhaust poured from the vents. Izuku held the vibrating leg in his grip like a man holding a noisy appliance. Your legs are fast. Your technique is stiff. You fight like a textbook. Textbooks burn. He tossed Ida across the ring. Engine stalled. Glasses lost. Winner. Midoriya. Third match, Tokoyami Fumikage. The shadow user released his entity at full power. Izuku flexed. The demon back emerged. The temperature dropped. The shadows in the arena pulled toward him. The entity, a being of rage and hunger, looked at the demon back and whimpered. It retreated behind Tokoyami like a child hiding behind its parent's leg. Your shadow has better instincts than you do, Izuku said. He walked forward. Leave. Tokoyami turned and walked out of the ring of his own accord. Winner, Midoriya! Semifinal, Bakugo Katsuki. The arena was electric. Everyone knew the history, the clips from the assessment, the childhood rivalry, the wall. Bakugo stood across the ring with trembling hands and a snarl that was trying hard to be rage and failing to hide the fear underneath. Begin! Bakugo charged, full power, maximum output, every explosion he had. He rocketed across the arena in a blaze of fire and screaming fury, his entire body a weapon aimed at the one person he'd been afraid of since he was 10 years old. Izuku stood still. He watched Bakugo approach. He saw the fear behind the rage and felt nothing. Bakugo's right fist came in, the biggest explosion of his life. The heat warped the air. Izuku tilted his head. The explosion went past his ear. Bakugo's fist grazed his cheek. A scratch. Izuku looked at Bakugo from inches away. You've gotten louder, but you haven't gotten stronger. He drove his fist into Bakugo's stomach. One punch. Center mass. A fist moving forward with the force of something between a car crash and a natural disaster. Bakugo folded around the impact. His eyes bulged. Everything in his body tried to exit at once. His legs left the ground. He flew backward. He hit the arena wall. He went through the arena wall. He hit the concrete behind it. The hole was Bakugo-shaped. Again. Winner. Midoriya, Midnight said. Her voice was thin. The crowd didn't cheer. They were too stunned. Then someone started clapping. Then 100. Then 1,000. The applause built and crashed over the stadium like a wave. The final. Todoroki Shoto, the son of Endeavor. Half cold, half hot. A personal vow to never use his father's fire. Midnight raised her hand. The stadium was so still that 80,000 people holding their breath was audible. Begin! Todoroki moved. Ice erupted from his right foot. A full, multi-story glacier surged across the arena, the largest ice attack he had ever produced. A wall of frozen fury aimed at ending the fight in one move. Izuku walked into it. He walked forward, and the glacier hit him, and the ice cracked against his chest like water against a cliff. He walked through a glacier the way a man walks through a curtain. Ice chunks fell from his shoulders. Frost melted from his body heat. Steam rose from his skin. He emerged 3 meters from Todoroki. You whine about your father's fire, Izuku said. Use it. Burn me. Show me you have a spine. The words hit Todoroki like a punch. His left side pulsed. The fire was there, always there, beating against the chains he'd wrapped around it. You stand in front of a god and choose to fight with one hand tied behind your back? Your father hurt you. Your mother paid the price. But standing in front of me and refusing to fight with everything you have, that makes you weaker than either of them. Something inside Todoroki Shoto broke. The chain snapped. The fire erupted. Both sides at maximum. Ice from the right, flame from the left. The glacier steamed. The air warped. In the stands, Endeavor stood up. Todoroki thrust both hands forward. Fire and ice combined into a spiraling beam of destruction that could have leveled a city block. Everything he had, every watt, every ounce, every year of pain. Izuku caught it. He raised both hands. The beam split against his palms. Fire rolled over his fingers and left nothing. Ice crawled up his wrists and melted on contact. The force pushed him back 1 inch. 1. He looked at the fire in his palms with mild curiosity. He studied it. Then he closed his hands and snuffed it out. He crossed the distance in 1 step. He slapped Todoroki across the face, open palm, 1 hand. The force of a man who could break mountains against a teenage boy made of flesh and bone. Todoroki left the arena. He launched. His body broke the sound barrier. His ribs cracked inward. He exited the arena, crossed the gap, and hit the concrete seating structure. The support pillar behind it fractured. He was unconscious before the slap finished connecting. The arena was silent. Midnight stood with her arm raised. Her mouth was open. Zero sound emerged. Present Mike was crying. Actual tears, the overwhelming kind, his voice gone. 3 seconds of silence. Then the stadium erupted. 80,000 humans witnessing apex predator behavior and responding with the only emotion available, submission, wrapped in awe. Izuku stood in the center of the arena, arms at his sides, expression flat. "If you ever hold back in my presence again," he said, and the arena microphones broadcast it to millions, "I will kill you." He walked out. Winner, champion, undefeated, untouched, Dewey winner and champion of the UA Sports Festival, Midoriya Izuku. President Mike wiped his face, leaned into the mic and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, what the hell are we looking at?" Nobody answered because nobody knew. The aftermath was seismic. Hero agencies flooded UA with internship offers. Endeavor's agency, Hawks, Best Genist, every name in the industry, Izuku rejected them all. "I'm bored of heroes," he told Aizawa. "Send me somewhere with villains, real ones, strong ones." Aizawa stared at him, then made a phone call he never thought he'd make. Izuku spent his internship week in Hosu City, alone, no agency, no mentor. Nezu approved it personally. When the commission asked why, Nezu said, "Supervision implies the ability to intervene. Can you?" They could not. Hosu City was tense. The hero killer had been cutting a path through the hero ranks for months. Stain, Akaguro Chizome, was a vigilante serial killer who targeted heroes he deemed unworthy. 17 kills, 26 crippled. The most wanted criminal in Japan besides All for One, he was somewhere in Hosu. He was about to make the worst decision of his life. It happened on the 3rd night. Ida Tenya was in Hosu. His brother Ingenium had been paralyzed by Stain. Ida had come burning for revenge. He told his agency he was there to learn. He was there to kill. He found Stain in an alley behind a shuttered warehouse. Or rather, Stain found him. The hero killer stood in the alley like a shadow with blades, his tattered red scarf hung over bandages, his eyes, flat, fanatical, gleamed. A katana at his hip, throwing knives lining his vest. His tongue flickered. Ida attacked. Recipro burst, a flying kick. Stain sidestepped, he slashed, one stroke. The blade caught Ida's shoulder and opened a line from collarbone to bicep. Ida crashed into the wall. "Another one who thinks the title hero means something," Stain said, walking toward him. "Your brother was the same, weak, playing dress-up. Don't you dare talk about my brother." "I'll do more than talk." Stain raised his blade. "I'll finish what I started." Then footsteps, even, unhurried, coming from the mouth of the alley, the sound of someone walking into a nightmare with their hands in their pockets. Stain turned. Izuku Midoriya stood at the entrance. Streetlight behind him. His silhouette was massive, wide shoulders, wild hair, the frame of something that belonged on a battlefield. "Who are you?" Stain asked. His instincts fired a warning he'd never felt before. "Midoriya Izuku, I've been looking for you." Stain studied him, the build, the posture. "You're a student. UA? Does it matter?" "It might. I've heard about you." The boy from the sports festival. Stain's eyes gleamed. "They say you're strong. I am the strongest creature on the face of this earth." Stain smiled, a thin, humorless thing. "We'll see." Stain moved. Fast, inhumanly fast for a man with 0 speed, Quirk. His blade cut through the air in a diagonal arc aimed at Izuku's throat. Izuku caught the blade. He caught it between his index finger and his thumb. The edge bit into his skin, blood welled around the steel. Stain's eyes went wide. "You're fast," Izuku said. "Your technique is real. You've killed people with this blade, and every kill made you sharper." He squeezed. The katana cracked. A fracture line raced from the pinch point to the tip. "But you're still just a man with a knife." He snapped the blade. The broken half clattered to the ground. Stain leaped back. Throwing knives filled his hands. 3 in rapid succession. Throat, heart, eye. Each one thrown with the accuracy of a man who had never missed. Izuku didn't dodge. The knives hit his neck, his chest, his cheekbone. They bounced off. His skin dented and sprang back. The blade tips bent against his flesh like they'd struck plate armor. Stain's face changed. What are you? Something you've never fought. Something you can't cut." Stain's tongue shot out, his last resort. Blood curdle. The tongue lashed across Izuku's cheek where the blade had drawn blood. Stain tasted it. His quirk activated. He waited. 1 second. 2. The paralysis should hit. The strongest heroes in Japan had fallen to this quirk. Izuku took a step forward. Stain's eyes went wide. You should be paralyzed. My quirk." "Your quirk works," Izuku said. He was directly in front of Stain now. but my body rejects it. I am the pinnacle of life. No disease, no poison, and no quirk can override my will. Stain's face went white. Izuku grabbed him by the throat. One hand, fingers closed like a collar. He lifted the hero killer off the ground. Stain clawed. He stabbed with his broken hilt. He kicked. His movements got weaker. His eyes bulged. Izuku held him at arm's length. You preach about worthy heroes. You kill the ones you deem unworthy. You think you have conviction. He leaned in. You judge the weak for being weak. But to me, you are just another insect. He threw Stain against the wall. The brickwork cratered. Stain bounced off and hit the ground on his hands and knees, gasping, bleeding. Izuku grabbed Stain's right arm, twisted it behind his back, kept twisting. The elbow broke first, a wet snap. Then the shoulder dislocated, a grinding pop. Stain's arm hung at an angle arms were never meant to reach. His scream cut off into a choked gasp. Left arm, same motion, same result. Elbow, shoulder, two sounds, each uglier than the last. Right knee. Izuku stomped, the joint inverted. Stain's body jackknifed. Left leg, same stomp, same result. 4 broken limbs. Stain lay on the alley floor, his body arranged at angles that Ada, watching from the wall, bleeding, terrified, unable to look away, could barely process. The hero killer's eyes were open. His breathing was shallow. His mouth moved, zero sound. Izuku crouched beside him. Do you understand now? This is the difference between us. He stood. He wiped the blood from his chin, his own blood from the cut, already stopped bleeding. He looked at Ida. Your brother, Ingenium. Was he worth this? Ida stared. Tears ran down his face. Yes, Ida whispered. Then get stronger, because the next person who comes for your family might be worse than this. He walked out of the alley, hands in his pockets, gone into the Hozu City night. The police found them 12 minutes later. Ida, bleeding, in shock. Stain, broken, breathing, unable to move. They reviewed the cameras. The alley had 2. Both caught everything. Detective Tsukauchi watched the footage 3 times. His lie detector quirk was useless against video, but his eyes worked fine, and they told him what he was looking at was real, and his brain told him it shouldn't be. Who is that? The officer beside him asked. Midoriya Izuku, UA first year. He did all of that in under 90 seconds. The footage was flagged, classified, stamped with a clearance level requiring 3 commissioners to access. They added Midoriya Izuku to a list that had previously contained only one other name. All for one. Hawks, invited to the commission's session as a consultant, leaned back in his chair and said the thing nobody else had the guts to say. He's above us, all of us, and he's 16. So the real question here isn't how to handle him. It's what happens when he decides he's bored with us. The room went cold. The semester wound down. Classes resumed. Students trained. The world outside UA's walls hummed with tension, speculation, and the creeping realization that the power structure of hero society was shifting. And the thing causing the shift hadn't even graduated yet. The students of Class 1A had adjusted. Kirishima sat next to Izuku at lunch every day now. He had doubled his muscle mass in 2 months. His hardening was twice as dense. When asked about his training regimen, he would say, Midoriya told me muscle is everything. I believe him. Uraraka brought food every day. The rice balls got better. She stammered less. She still blushed, but the blush had changed. Less fear, more something else. Something she was figuring out in real time. Todoroki trained with both sides, fire and ice, together, for the first time in his life. He trained alone at night in the empty gym, and the sounds of cracking ice and roaring flame echoed through the dormitory halls. He was rebuilding himself from the foundation. After the slap, after the words, after "show me you have a spine." Bakugo was different. The rage had burned out. What replaced it was harder and more honest. A grinding determination that had nothing to do with being number one and everything to do with refusing to be nothing. He trained harder than anyone except Izuku. He expanded his quirk. He pushed his body. He never spoke to Izuku, but every day he measured the distance between himself and the thing that had haunted him since childhood. The distance was still infinite. He kept running anyway. Mirko, in her apartment in Tokyo, watched the stain footage on her phone for the 5th time. She paused on the frame where Izuku caught the blade between 2 fingers. She zoomed in on his face, the expression, the absolute lack of concern. She put the phone down. She looked at the ceiling. She felt her heart beating too fast and her face getting warm, and she hated it, and she replayed the video again. "Bear, my child," she muttered, mocking him. Then she threw the phone across the room because the mockery had failed to put out whatever was burning in her chest. She picked the phone up 30 seconds later and watched the clip again. Izuku stood on the rooftop of UAH's main building on the last day of the semester. The sun was going down. The city spread beneath him, lights flickering on, roads threading between buildings, the distant hum of 10 million lives. He rolled his shoulders. The demon back shifted beneath his skin, alive, hungry, always waiting. The villains would come again. Shigaraki was out there, scratching, obsessing, planning. All for One was out there in the shadows, pulling strings. The commission was circling. The world was adjusting, slowly, painfully, to the presence of something that fit in 0 boxes. Good. Let them adjust. Let them plan. Let them bring their weapons and their strategies and their desperation. Strength is justice, Anaki said to the city. Strength is absolute. He turned from the edge. He descended. He passed Aizawa in the hall, who nodded once and said nothing. He passed Uraraka, who held out a rice ball and whispered, "For the train ride home." He took it. Good. He passed Todoroki, who met his eyes. The Ice and Fire Boy's gaze was harder now, clearer. Something was growing behind those mismatched eyes, something the old Todoroki would have strangled in the crib. Potential. He passed Bakugo at the front gate. Bakugo was leaning against the wall, staring at the sky. His right hand was in his pocket. His jaw was set. They didn't speak. But as Izuku walked past, Bakugo's eyes tracked him, and the trembling was gone. The fear was still there, deep, permanent, but something else had joined it, something that looked like resolve. Izuku noticed. He said nothing. Resolve from weaklings was like a candle in a hurricane, interesting to watch. Irrelevant to the storm, he walked through the UA gates. He walked down the road. He walked into the city. Behind him, the school stood in the fading light. Behind the school, the students he'd broken and rebuilt by mere existence were already training for a version of themselves that could survive in a world where he existed. Behind the city, the pro-hero establishment held meetings about a teenager. Behind the meetings, the villains regrouped, evolved, searched for an answer to a question they could barely articulate. And at the center of all of it, the axis, the origin, the thing around which the world had begun to orbit, Izuku Midoriya walked home alone. He ate the rice ball. It was good. Uraraka was improving. He would tell her next semester. Or maybe he would just keep eating them and let the silence say what words couldn't. He turned a corner. The streetlights came on. His shadow stretched long behind him, longer than it should have been, wider, as if the shape casting it was larger than what the eye could see. The strongest creature on the face of the earth, alone at the top of the world. Walking home. In a bar in Kamino Ward, miles away, Shigaraki Tomura sat in dim light and scratched his neck until it bled. The television behind the counter played sports festival footage on loop. The clip of the slap had been playing for 6 hours. "Sensei," Shigaraki whispered into his phone. "The Nomu failed. Stain failed, everything I sent failed." The voice on the other end was smooth, old, and amused. "Then we'll send something that won't fail, Tomura. Be patient." Patient? He tore the Nomu in half with his hands. Yes, and that is why he is interesting. A pause. "Tell me, Tomura, have you ever heard of the Hanma bloodline?" Silence. "What?" "We'll discuss it in person. Come home. We have work to do." The line went dead. Shigaraki stared at the phone. He stared at the television. He stared at the green-haired monster on screen, who had dismantled everything he'd built with the effort of a man brushing crumbs off a table. He scratched his neck. He bled. He smiled. "Midoriya Izuku," he whispered. "I'm going to find something that can hurt you. And when I do, I'm going to watch it eat you alive." The television played on. The crowd roared. The monster walked away. Somewhere in Musutafu, Izuku Midoriya sneezed. He wiped his nose. He kept walking. The world wasn't ready for what came next, but it was coming regardless. And at the center of it, as always, the ogre walked alone, untouched, unbothered, and completely certain that whatever arrived would either be entertaining or be dead. Either way worked for him. The summer break lasted 2 weeks. Izuku spent the first week eating. His body had been running at maintenance levels through the semester. 6,000 calories a day, which for him was practically fasting. Now, with 0 obligations and 0 interruptions, he ate like a siege engine refueling. Inko's kitchen ran around the clock. Whole chickens vanished. Rice cookers emptied and refilled 3 times a day. The third refrigerator, which had been a joke 6 years ago, was now a load-bearing pillar of the household economy. Inko watched her son eat an entire side of salmon at 7 in the morning and said, "Izuku, the fish market called. They want to know if you're planning to buy the whole harbor." "Tell them I'll think about it," he said, pulling bones from his teeth. She sighed. She smiled. She started the next pot of rice. The second week, he trained. He ran the harbor loop carrying a bag that weighed 200 kilograms. He did push-ups on his index fingers until the concrete beneath his hands cracked and he had to move to a fresh patch. He hung from the underside of bridges by his toes and did inverted crunches until the bridge groaned. A construction crew working on the overpass near the harbor reported strange vibrations to the city. An engineer came out, inspected the bridge, found a set of toe-shaped dents in the steel I-beam on the underside, and filed a report that read, "Structural anomaly. Cause unknown. Recommendation, do not investigate further." The engineer had seen the sports festival. He knew exactly what had caused those dents. He also knew that investigating further would require confronting whatever left them. And he had a wife and 2 children and a mortgage and absolutely zero interest in dying. On the first Monday of the new semester, Izuku walked through the UA gates, and the security guard at the front post stood up straight so fast he knocked over his coffee. The man didn't say anything. He just stood at attention. The way a soldier stands when a general passes, Izuku walked past without looking. In the teacher's lounge, Aizawa Shota was pouring himself a cup of coffee when his phone buzzed, a message from the Hero Safety Commission. He read it once. He read it twice. He put the phone down and picked up his coffee and drank the entire cup in one pull. "Problem?" Present Mike asked from across the room. "The commission is sending an observer to UA." "Observer? For what?" "For him." Present Mike didn't need to ask who him was. There was only one person at UA who warranted commission attention at this level. He whistled low. "They're poking the bear. They're poking something worse than a bear," Aizawa said. He refilled his coffee. "Bears can be tranquilized." The commission's operative arrived on a Wednesday. Her name was Nagant, Lady Nagant, and she was everything the commission valued in an asset. Precise, obedient, and equipped with a quirk that could end most situations from a distance that made retaliation impossible. Her hair was dark blue, her eyes were sharp, and her right arm housed a rifle barrel made from her own body. She could fire organic bullets at speeds that competed with actual ammunition. She had been the commission's top field operative for 8 years. Her mission record was spotless. Every target she had been assigned to observe, evaluate, or eliminate had been observed, evaluated, or eliminated. She set up her safe house 3 blocks from UA's campus. A clean apartment with sightlines to the school's main courtyard. She unpacked surveillance equipment, a long-range scope, and a file on Midoriya Izuku that was thicker than any file she'd been handed in her career. She read the file in 2 hours. She watched the Camino footage twice. She watched the stain footage once. She watched the sports festival footage 4 times because on the first 3 viewings, her brain kept insisting that what she was seeing was edited. She set up her scope on the first morning and found Izuku in the courtyard. He was doing one-armed push-ups on his index finger in the rain. Steam rose from his body with every rep. The raindrops hit his back and evaporated on contact. She watched for 6 hours that first day. She made notes. Height, approximately 185 centimeters and still growing. Weight, impossible to estimate accurately. Muscle density appeared to exceed any known human metric. Threat assessment, the file said undefined. After 6 hours of observation, Nagant wrote a single addendum in the margin. Undefined is the wrong word. The correct word is incomprehensible. She watched for 7 days. She tracked his movements. She cataloged his interactions. She noted that he ate approximately 8,000 calories a day at UA's cafeteria, that the lunch staff had started preparing a separate meal tray for him that weighed 12 kilograms, and that the head chef had begun referring to his meals as the shipment. She noted that he trained every morning at 5 a.m. alone. She noted that his push-up count exceeded anything her equipment could measure, because the motion was so fast the camera captured blurs. She noted that on the 4th day, he paused mid-rep, turned his head, and looked directly at her scope. Through the lens, their eyes met. Nagant's blood went cold. She was 3 blocks away, on a rooftop, behind tinted glass, using military-grade optics that emitted 0 light signature. He was looking right at her. He held her gaze for 3 seconds. Then he went back to his push-ups. She put the scope down with hands that refused to stay steady and sat in the dark of her safe house for 20 minutes before she could write anything. When she did, her handwriting was smaller than usual. Target is aware of surveillance, has been aware since day 1, chose to allow observation. Implications, he is studying us, studying him. On the 7th night, there was a knock on her door. Nagant's rifle arm was loaded and aimed in under a second. She moved to the door. She checked the peephole. Izuku Midoriya stood in the hallway, hands at his sides, expression blank, green eyes catching the hallway light. She opened the door. Her arm was still in rifle configuration, the barrel pointed at the floor. Her body was coiled. Every instinct she had, 8 years of commission field work, 100 successful operations, told her that the thing on the other side of this door was beyond her capacity to manage. "You've been watching me for 7 days," Izuku said. He walked past her into the apartment without waiting for an invitation. He looked around. He saw the scope. He saw the file. He saw the surveillance photos pinned to the wall, dozens of them, all of him, taken from 3 blocks away. He sat down at the table. He folded his arms. The chair creaked beneath his weight. "Did you learn anything useful?" Nagant stood in the doorway. Her rifle arm twitched. She was faster than most pro heroes. She could put a bullet through a 2-centimeter gap at 800 meters. She had ended villains who could tank grenades. She looked at Izuku Midoriya sitting at her table, and every fiber of her being told her that if she raised that arm, the last thing she would ever see was the inside of this apartment. She lowered the arm. She closed the door. She sat across from him. "My orders are to observe and evaluate," she said. Her voice was level. "Professional. If necessary, to neutralize." Izuku looked at her. He tilted his head. The way a predator tilts its head when something small makes a noise. Neutralize. He repeated the word like he was tasting it. Then he put his hand flat on the table, his palm pressed down. The wood groaned, then cracked, then split. A fracture line running from under his hand to the table's edge, clean as a razor cut. He hadn't pushed, he just rested his hand there. The table broke from the weight of his relaxed palm. "Tell your commission I am not a problem to be managed. I am a fact to be lived with." He stood up. He walked to the door. He paused. "Your quirk is interesting. The rifle mechanism in your arm, organic, self-generating ammunition. Your accuracy is genuine. You would be wasted as a spy." He left. Nagant sat at her broken table for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and called the commission's direct line. The report she filed that night was 4 pages long. It was the most honest document the Hero Safety Commission had received from a field operative in a decade. The assessment section read, "Target Midoriya Izuku cannot be contained, redirected, suppressed, or eliminated by any asset currently available to this organization. His physical capabilities exceed all known quirk-based enhancement metrics by an order of magnitude that this operative lacks the vocabulary to describe. He is aware of commission operations at all times. He allowed this surveillance as an exercise in demonstrating his awareness. Recommendation: do nothing. Accept reality. Reassign this operative to a target that is actually possible." The commission chair read the report in his office at 2 in the morning. He read it twice. He put it in a locked drawer. He poured a drink. He drank it. He poured another one. The world was learning, slowly, painfully. The way the ground learns to accept the mountain that sits on top of it. 3 days after Nagant's report was filed, Mirko showed up at UA. She didn't request entry through official channels. She walked through the front during the 15-second window when the security guard turned to check a delivery manifest. The guard turned back and saw the back of the rabbit hero's white hair disappearing across the courtyard. He reached for his radio. He put it down. He'd seen her reputation. He'd also seen what she could do to a person who delayed her. He filed a report that said unscheduled visitor Hiro Mirko entered campus, did not attempt to stop. She found him in the courtyard. He was doing one-arm push-ups on his index finger. Again, the stone beneath his finger was cratered. Sweat ran down his arm in lines that followed the grooves between muscles that anatomy textbooks hadn't invented names for yet. Mirko stopped 5 meters away. She watched. Her arms crossed, her rabbit ears twitched. She watched the way a fighter watches another fighter, tracking the mechanics, the efficiency, the power stored in every motion. She watched for a full minute. "You came back," Izuku said. He didn't look up. He didn't stop the push-ups. Mirko's ears went flat. "Shut up." He finished his set. He stood. He turned. The morning light hit his torso, and every muscle cast its own shadow. He was bigger than the last time she'd seen him. Taller. Wider in the shoulders. Whatever engine drove his growth hadn't stopped. He looked at her. She looked at him. The silence between them was heavy with something that didn't have a name in any language either of them spoke. It lived in the space between two people who operated at frequencies the rest of the world couldn't tune to. She was the strongest kicker in Japan. She fought alone. She charged into everything head first. She had never, in her entire career, been stopped by anything she hit. He had stopped her kick with one hand, and she'd been thinking about that hand for 6 months. "I watched the stain footage," she said. Everyone watched the stain footage. "You caught his blade between your fingers. It was a weak blade. You broke his arms and legs in under a minute. He was slow." Mirko's jaw tightened. Her ears snapped upright. She dropped into a fighting stance, one leg forward, the other loaded, her entire body a wound spring of kicking power that had hospitalized A-rank villains and demolished reinforced walls. "Fight me," she said. Izuku studied her. The stance, the tension in her calves, the explosive potential in her thighs. Real, genuine. The product of a woman who had built herself into a weapon through pure physical discipline. Among all the pro-heroes he'd encountered, she was the one who came closest to understanding what he was. She built her power in the body. She earned it in the muscle. She didn't rely on gimmicks or costumes or public relations. She was still leagues below him, galaxies below, but the direction of her strength was correct. "Fine," he said. Mirko launched. Her right leg came around in a roundhouse that split the air. The crack of displaced atmosphere was audible across the courtyard. Students in the nearby building felt the pressure wave through the windows. Kaminari, who was walking to class with his headphones on, felt his eardrums pop and screamed. Izuku raised his forearm. The kick connected. The impact sent a shockwave through the courtyard that blew leaves off the decorative trees. The stone pavers beneath Izuku's feet fractured in a ring. He hadn't moved backward. His arm hadn't bent. Mirko's eyes widened. She spun, left leg, rising heel, the same kick that had put holes in concrete walls throughout her career. Izuku caught her ankle. Again. His hand wrapped around her leg at the peak of the kick. Her momentum died. She hung there, suspended, one leg extended, body tilted. The most dangerous kicker in Japan stopped mid-swing by a teenager's grip. Izuku raised one eyebrow. "You've gotten faster," he said. He ran his thumb across the muscle of her calf, the same motion from the first time, months ago, feeling the density, the improvement. "The fiber structure is denser. You've been training heavier." Mirko's face was red, fury and something else. She pulled. Her leg didn't budge. "Let go." "Why?" "Because if you don't..." "You'll what? Kick me with the leg I'm holding?" Her other foot left the ground. She twisted her entire body mid-air, using the trapped leg as a pivot point, and launched a spinning kick with her free leg aimed at his temple. The move was acrobatic, vicious, and would have decapitated most humans. Izuku caught that ankle too. He was holding both her legs. She hung upside down, suspended by her ankles in his grip, her white hair brushing the courtyard stones, her face approximately 2 feet from the ground and approximately 3 shades past crimson. "Put me down. You're the one who asked for a fight. This is not a fight. This is... Put me down." He held her there for 3 more seconds. His expression was blank, comfortable, like a man holding grocery bags. Then he set her down, gently. Her feet touched the ground. He released her ankles. She stumbled back, breathing hard, ears flat, eyes bright. "Your kicks can crack a mountain," he said. "With the right training, you could crack 2. She stared at him, her chest heaved. Her fists were clenched. Something behind her eyes was fighting a war she'd been losing since the first time he grabbed her leg, and the war was almost over, and the side that was winning was the side she'd sworn didn't exist. "I'm coming back tomorrow," she said. Her voice was rough. I know. She turned. She walked toward the gate. She made it 4 steps. The offer still stands, Izuku said to her back. Whenever you're ready. Mirko's ears went straight up. Her entire body went rigid. She kept walking. She walked faster. She walked through the gate and down the street and didn't stop until she was 6 blocks away, at which point she kicked a dumpster so hard it embedded into the wall of the adjacent building. A man walking his dog on the other side of the street stared. "What are you looking at?" Mirko screamed. The man and the dog both accelerated to a speed neither had achieved before. Mirko stood in the street, her heart hammered, her face burned. She pressed both hands against her cheeks and felt the heat radiating from her skin. "Stupid," she muttered. "Stupid, stupid, stupid." She came back the next day, and the day after, and the day after that. The word spread through UA like a brush fire. Mirko, the rabbit hero, the number 5 pro in Japan, was showing up at the school every morning to train with Izuku Midoriya. Students pressed their faces against classroom windows. Faculty exchanged loaded glances in the halls. Aizawa developed a new eye twitch. "She's here again," Present Mike said, peering through the lounge window at the courtyard where Mirko and Izuku were sparring. Mirko's kicks were cracking the air. Izuku was catching every single one. The courtyard was starting to look like a demolition site. "I can see that," Aizawa said without looking up from his coffee. "She's smiling." "I said I can see that." "Bro, she never smiles." Aizawa drank his coffee. The cup was empty. He kept drinking. Then the training camp happened. UA's summer training camp was held at a forested mountain reserve owned by the Wild Pussycats, a team of 4 nature-themed heroes whose combined quirks covered search, rescue, terrain manipulation, and communication. The location was remote. The purpose was intensive training. Every student in Class 1A was expected to push their quirk to its absolute limit over 5 days of structured exercises. Izuku didn't have a quirk to push. He pushed everything else. On the first day, Pixie Bob, the earth manipulation hero, created a series of rock golems for the students to fight. The golems were 10 feet tall, dense, and relentless. Each student was assigned 1. Izuku was assigned 5. Pixie Bob had seen the entrance exam footage. She figured 5 would keep him busy for at least a few minutes. He destroyed all 5 in 11 seconds. The last one he punched so hard, the golem's upper half separated from its lower half, and the top portion sailed over the tree line and crashed into a lake 300 meters away. The splash was visible from the camp. Pixie Bob stared at the water raining down from the distant impact. "That was my best work." "Make better work," Izuku said and walked toward the mess hall. On the second night, the Vanguard Action Squad attacked. The signal was fire. Blue flames erupted in the tree line at the northern perimeter. Dabi, the cremation villain, burning a firewall that cut off the camp's primary escape route. Simultaneously, a toxic gas cloud rolled through the forest from the east. Mustard, a masked villain with a gas quirk. The communication lines went dead. The Pussycats network collapsed. Chaos erupted. Students scattered. Faculty mobilized. In the darkness of the mountain forest, villains moved like shadows. Magni, with her magnetism. Spinner, with his stacked blades. Twice, duplicating himself endlessly. Toga, shape-shifting and hungry for blood. And Muscular. Gato Muscular, real name classified, was the Vanguard Action Squad's heavy hitter. His quirk, muscle augmentation, allowed him to amplify his muscle fibers to grotesque proportions. His body could swell to 3 times its normal size, layered in coils of enhanced tissue that absorbed punishment and delivered it back tenfold. He had murdered families. He wore an artificial eye over the one a hero had taken from him years ago. He was, by any reasonable metric, the most physically dangerous villain the League had ever fielded. He found Izuku in a clearing near the northern perimeter. Or rather, Izuku found him. Muscular was charging through the forest toward the student dormitories when he burst into a clearing and stopped dead. Izuku was standing in the center of the open space, arms at his sides, shirt off. The demon back was awake, the face between his shoulder blades twisting, snarling, alive. His green eyes caught the moonlight and reflected it back like something that hunted in the dark. Muscular grinned. His artificial eye glowed. "So you're the kid from the sports festival, the one who thinks he's tough." "I don't think anything," Izuku said. "Thinking implies uncertainty." Muscular's body erupted. Muscle fiber burst from every limb. Thick, ropey coils of enhanced tissue that swelled his arms, his legs, his torso into a mass of flesh that stood 8 feet tall and weighed over 500 kilograms. The ground cratered beneath his expanded weight. Trees near him bent away from the pressure of displaced air. "Let's see how tough you really are," he charged. His fist, a wrecking ball of layered muscle fiber, rocketed forward with enough force to collapse a building's foundation. Izuku didn't move. The fist connected with his open palm. The shockwave leveled every tree in a 30-meter radius. The ground split in lines radiating outward from the impact point. Dirt and rock launched into the air. The sound was a thundercrack that echoed off the mountains. Izuku held Muscular's fist in his palm. His feet had sunk 6 inches into the ground from the force. His arm hadn't bent. Muscular's grin faltered. "Impressive muscle density," Izuku said. He studied the coils of fiber wrapped around Muscular's arm. He squeezed. His fingers sank into the fiber. The enhanced tissue compressed, resisted, and then began to collapse. Muscular's artificial eye went wide. The fiber structure is layered but rigid. You can add volume, you can't add quality. He squeezed harder. The muscle fiber in Muscular's fist crumbled, compressed to powder between Izuku's fingers. Bone cracked beneath the collapsing tissue. Muscular screamed. Izuku grabbed Muscular's wrist with his other hand. He planted his foot on Muscular's chest. He pushed. Muscular's arm dislocated at the shoulder. The enhanced fiber tore. The villain's body flew backward 15 meters and hit a boulder. The boulder cracked down the middle. Muscular scrambled up. His right arm hung useless. Muscle fiber was regenerating, trying to rebuild. He screamed and charged again, leading with his left. Izuku sidestepped. He grabbed Muscular by both ankles. He lifted the 500-kilogram villain off the ground like a man picking up a gym bag. He swung Muscular overhead and brought him down. The impact punched a crater 8 feet deep into the earth. The shockwave flattened every standing tree within 50 meters. Dirt erupted in a geyser. Rocks launched skyward. The ground shook hard enough that students half a kilometer away felt it through their shoes and assumed it was an earthquake. Muscular lay in the crater. His enhanced muscle fiber was shredded. His limbs were bent at angles that spoke of fractures in places that had never been fractured before. His artificial eye had popped out and lay in the dirt beside him, still glowing. His real eye stared upward at the sky, unfocused, processing the absolute failure of everything his body had built. Izuku stood at the crater's edge. He looked down. "Wrong bloodline," he said. He turned. He walked away. Bakugo Katsuki was standing 15 feet from the clearing. He had arrived 30 seconds into the fight, running toward the noise. He had watched the entire thing. Muscular, a villain who could have killed most pro heroes, dismantled in under a minute by a boy his age. Bakugo said nothing. His hands were in his pockets. His right hand trembled. It always trembled now. But his eyes were different. Something had hardened behind the fear. Something that looked less like terror and more like resolution. He watched Izuku walk past. Their eyes met for half a second. "Stay inside," Izuku said. The instruction was flat. "The ones still alive are mine." He disappeared into the forest. What followed was less a battle and more a cleanup operation. Magni charged at him from behind a ridge. Her magnetism, Quirk pulled every metal object in a 20-meter radius toward Izuku. Knives, tools, a section of collapsed rebar. The metal converged on him from all directions. Izuku flexed his chest. The demon back surged. A pulse of raw kinetic energy radiated from his body, visible as a distortion in the air like heat shimmer from a bonfire. Every piece of metal stopped in mid-flight. Magni's quirk was still active. The metal was still magnetized. But the force holding the metal objects in place was stronger than the force pulling them. They hung in the air around Izuku like frozen rain. He walked through the suspended metal. Each piece fell behind him as he passed, clattering to the ground, inert. Magni's eyes went wide. She turned to run. She made it 3 steps. Izuku closed the distance in one stride. He grabbed the back of her collar and threw her into a tree trunk. The tree snapped at the base. She hit the ground unconscious. Spinner came next. He leaped from a branch with his stacked blade sword, a massive weapon made of dozens of welded knives. He brought it down in a 2-handed overhead strike aimed at Izuku's skull. Izuku caught the blade between his palms. He held the stacked sword still while Spinner hung from it, his full body weight pulling down. "This weapon is ugly," Izuku said. He snapped the blade. The welded knives scattered like broken teeth. Spinner dropped to the ground. Izuku kicked him. One motion, one foot, placed against the center of Spinner's chest. The villain launched through 2 trees and embedded into a third. The tree held. Spinner did too, stuck 3 feet off the ground like a mounted trophy, unconscious. Twice tried to overwhelm him with numbers. A dozen clones charged from all sides. Each one was a copy of Twice himself, identical, frantic, screaming contradictions. Izuku clapped his hands. The shockwave, the same technique that had vaporized the sludge villain a year ago, erupted from his palms and flattened every clone simultaneously. They popped like soap bubbles. The real Twice, crouching behind a rock 40 meters away, felt the pressure wave hit him like a truck. He flew backward, bounced off the ground twice, and came to rest against a fallen log, groaning. Toga found him in a ravine. She was crouching on a branch, knife in hand, her golden eyes bright with obsession. She watched him walk beneath her. She licked her lips. She dropped. Izuku caught her by the throat mid-air without looking up. He held her at arm's length. Her knife hand stabbed at his forearm. The blade bent against his skin. He looked at her. She was grinning. Blood from a cut she'd gotten earlier streaked her cheek. "You're insane," she said, giggling. "I love it." "You collect blood," Izuku said. He studied her the way he studied everything, with total comprehension and zero sentiment. "Your quirk requires it." "Yep, one taste and I become anyone. Want to see?" He dropped her. She hit the ground and rolled. He turned and walked away. "I don't fight the delusional," he said over his shoulder. "Clean yourself up." Toga lay on the ravine floor and stared at the canopy. Her heart was racing. Her grin was enormous. "He dropped me and walked away," she whispered to herself. "That's the hottest thing anyone's ever done." She was wrong. She was also, unfortunately, going to fixate on this moment for the rest of her life. Dabi was the last one standing. The cremation villain stood at the northern perimeter, blue flames roaring from both hands. The firewall behind him had consumed 100 meters of forest. The heat was volcanic. He saw Izuku emerge from the trees, shirtless, demon back pulsing, green eyes flat. "You're the one from the footage," Dabi said. His voice was bored. His eyes were dead. "The Hanma kid." "You know that name." "Everyone knows that name now." Dabi raised his hands. Blue flame coiled around his arms. The temperature spiked. The air between them warped. "You're supposed to be unkillable." "Let's test that." He fired. A column of blue flame, 2,000 degrees, hotter than magma, hot enough to melt steel in seconds, erupted from both hands and hit Izuku full in the chest. The flame engulfed him. The ground beneath his feet turned to glass. The trees behind him ignited spontaneously from the radiant heat alone. Dabi held the stream for 5 seconds. 10. 15. He poured everything he had into the blast. His arms blistered from the heat of his own quirk. His staples popped. Blood ran from the edges of his grafted skin. He cut the flame. The clearing was a wasteland. Melted stone, burning trees, smoke so thick it blocked the moonlight. Izuku stood in the center of it. His skin was red. Steam poured from his body. His pants were scorched. His shoes were melted. Every hair on his arms was gone. His face was unchanged. He looked at his arms. He looked at the reddened skin. He rolled his shoulders. The demon back rippled. "Pain?" he said. Sabaki looked at Dabi. "I don't feel it." Dabi's dead eyes flickered. Something alive moved behind them, brief, bright, and terrified. Izuku crossed the distance in 2 steps. He grabbed Dabi by the face. His palm was still superheated from the flame. The heat transferred into Dabi's grafted skin, and the villain screamed. His own element turned against him through sheer thermal mass. Izuku lifted him off the ground, held him at arm's length. "Blue flame. Impressive temperature output. You burn yourself to use it." He studied the scars, the staples, the grafted tissue. "You hate yourself. I can see it in how you fight. You attack like someone who hopes the fire takes them too." Dabi clawed at his hand. Flames sputtered from his fingers. They hit Izuku's arm and died. "Self-destruction isn't strength," Izuku said. "It's weakness wearing a costume." He threw Dabi into the firewall the villain had created. The blue flames engulfed their maker. Dabi screamed, burned by his own creation, the heat he'd unleashed now consuming the body that produced it. He survived. He always survived. That was the specific cruelty of his existence. Izuku turned toward the camp. The forest behind him burned. Above him, the smoke parted, and moonlight fell through the gap like a spotlight on a stage. Every villain who had attacked the training camp was down, muscular, cratered. Magni, unconscious. Spinner, embedded in a tree. Twice, concussed. Toga, lying in a ravine, processing her feelings. Dabi, burning in his own fire. The Vanguard Action Squad's assault, months of planning, dozens of villains, multiple quirks coordinated for maximum devastation, had lasted 19 minutes. Izuku had ended it in 11. The pro-heroes arrived 20 minutes after the last villain fell. The Wild Pussycats communication network came back online. Aizawa, who had been fighting Dabi's foot soldiers near the dormitories, emerged from the tree line with his binding cloth wrapped around 7 unconscious villains and a look on his face that said he already knew. He handled it, Aizawa said to Vlad King, who was running toward the northern perimeter with students in tow. How many? All of them. Vlad King stopped running. He looked at the burning forest. He looked at the craters. He looked at the 8-foot hole in the ground where Muscular was still lying, staring at the sky, his enhanced muscle deflated around him like a burst balloon. All of them, he repeated. All of them. The police arrived an hour later. Ambulances, fire crews, helicopters, the full response. Detectives interviewed students. Paramedics loaded villains onto stretchers. The media converged on the mountain access road and was held back by a police cordon that stretched 500 meters. The commission was notified. They held a conference call at 3 a.m. The agenda had one item, the training camp attack and its resolution. The resolution was Izuku Midoriya. Again. He did everything, the report stated. Every villain was neutralized by a single student. Faculty intervention was limited to support roles after the primary threat was eliminated. The commission chair pinched the bridge of his nose. This can't continue. Hawks, who was on the call from his apartment, lying in bed with his wings draped over the mattress and a smoothie in his hand, said, "What exactly are you planning to do about it?" "That's what we need to discuss." "No, genuinely. I'm asking, what are you going to do? Send Nagan again?" She filed a 4-page report that basically said, "He let me watch him and then came to my apartment to tell me he knew. You want to send someone else?" "Who? Endeavor? The man who couldn't handle his own family? All Might, who's been reduced to a skeleton?" Silence. "Here's the thing none of you want to hear," Hawk said, sipping his smoothie. "He's doing your job. He's doing it better than any of you have ever done it. And the only reason you're uncomfortable is because he's doing it without asking permission." The conference call lasted another 45 minutes. They reached no conclusions. Hawks finished his smoothie and fell asleep with the phone still on. Then Kamino happened. It started with a broadcast. Every screen in Japan, televisions, phones, tablets, digital billboards, was hijacked simultaneously. The same image, a ruined cityscape. Kamino Ward. Buildings leveled, streets cratered, smoke rising from a dozen fires. And at the center of the destruction, standing on a mound of rubble that had once been a residential block, was All for One. He looked like a nightmare given form. His face was a ruin, scarred, eyeless, the product of a life spent collecting power and discarding everything that made someone human. He wore a suit, his hands were clasped behind his back. The wind stirred his clothes. "Citizens of Japan," he said. His voice was broadcast through the hijacked speakers. It was smooth, old, and amused. "Allow me to reintroduce myself." The response was immediate. Every available pro-hero in the greater Tokyo area mobilized. Endeavor, Edge Shot, Gang Orca, Best Genist, Hawks. Every name, every rank, every hero who could reach Kamino in time, All Might went too. He shouldn't have. His body was failing. One for All was embers. His muscle form lasted minutes at best. He was a symbol running on fumes and willpower, and both were almost gone. He went anyway, because he was All Might, because the world needed him to go. Because that was the only thing he knew how to do. The pro-heroes hit Kamino Ward at 9:47 p.m. They found a war zone. Kurogiri's portals had deposited dozens of high-level villains across the district. The streets were a maze of fire, rubble, and combat. Heroes engaged on every front, All for One stood at the epicenter and waited. Best Genist reached him first. The Fiber Master, the number 3 hero, launched his threads at All for One from 100 meters out. Carbon fiber cables that could restrain entire buildings. They wrapped around All for One's torso, his arms, his legs. All for One raised one hand. An air cannon quirk, stolen, compressed, amplified, fired from his palm. The blast shredded the fibers and hit Best Jeanist full in the chest. The hero flew backward faster than the eye could track. He hit a building. The building collapsed around him. He didn't get up. Edge shot attacked next. He folded his body into a razor-thin line and aimed for All for One's heart. A killing blow. Justified by the threat level, All for One caught him mid-fold. A quirk that hardened the air itself, a stolen ability, one of hundreds, crystallized the space around Edgeshot's compressed form. The hero was frozen in place, inches from impact, trapped in solid air. All for One flicked him away. Gang Orca. Hawks, 3 other heroes whose names the cameras couldn't catch because the footage was shaking too badly. They came in waves. All for One dismantled them. A different quirk for each one. Force multiplication for the strong ones. Gravity inversion for the fast ones. Impact absorption for the ones who hit hard. Every combination tested and discarded in seconds. He was a collector facing a display of his own trophies, and he found them all wanting. Then All Might arrived. He came through the smoke in his muscle form, fists clenched, smile in place. The real smile, the one that said, "I am here." The one that had held Japan together for 30 years, All for One turned to face him. Toshinori. How thin the embers have gotten. All Might said nothing. He attacked. The fight lasted 4 minutes. That was all the symbol of peace had left. 4 minutes of One for All's dying flame poured into every punch. He hit All for One with everything. Detroit Smash, Carolina Smash, combinations that shook buildings and cratered streets. He was magnificent. He was desperate. He was burning the last of himself to buy time for a world that had already used up everything he had to give. All for One absorbed it. He tanked every blow with layered quirks, impact negation, kinetic redistribution, structural reinforcement. He let All Might exhaust himself the way a cliff lets waves exhaust themselves. Patiently. Inevitably, at 4 minutes and 12 seconds, All Might's body gave out. The muscle form deflated on live television, in front of every camera, in front of every screen, in front of a nation that had built its entire sense of safety on the shoulders of one man. Toshinori Yagi, thin, gaunt, hollow, stood in the rubble of Kamino Ward and coughed blood onto his fist. All for One laughed. "There it is," the ancient villain said. "The truth. The man behind the curtain. Shall I tell them, Toshinori? Shall I tell the whole world what their symbol of peace really looks like?" Every camera was rolling. Every screen was live. 80 million people watching. Then footsteps. Even unhurried. Heavy in a way that had nothing to do with weight and everything to do with gravity. The kind of gravity that a body generates when it has enough massive presence to bend the world around it. Coming through the smoke. The cameras turned. The heroes on the ground turned. All for One turned. Izuku Midoriya walked out of the ruins of Kamino Ward. He was shirtless. He'd removed his shirt somewhere between the UA dormitory and Kamino, probably while walking, probably without breaking stride. The demon back was alive. The face between his shoulder blades screamed in the firelight. His green hair was wild with dust and smoke. His body, that impossible, defiant, quirkless body, radiated heat in visible waves. He hadn't been called. He hadn't been deployed. He hadn't been sanctioned, authorized, or invited. He had come because the air smelled like something real. "So you're the one pulling the strings," Izuku said. His voice carried across the devastated street like a sentence being read by a judge. "The shadow, the collector, the old man who grows stronger by stealing from others." He tilted his head. "I'm disappointed. You look like everyone else." All for One studied him, the ancient villain's ruined face. Eyeless, scarred, a mask of accumulated damage turned toward the approaching figure. His stolen quirks flared. Infrared vision, bioelectric scanning, cellular analysis, kinetic measurement. Every stolen sense he possessed locked onto Izuku's body and read it. His expression changed. For the first time since the broadcast began, the smile left All for One's face. "The Hanma bloodline," he said. His voice was quieter now. "I've been waiting to meet you in person." "I don't wait for anyone," Izuku said. "You came to the wrong city." All for One straightened. He raised his hands. Dozens of stolen quirks activated simultaneously. Layered, combined, multiplied against each other in combinations that had taken decades to perfect. Force multiplication stacked on gravity inversion, stacked on air cannon, stacked on kinetic amplification, stacked on bone-crushing pressure, stacked on stored energy release. A composite attack that contained the accumulated stolen power of 100 Quirk users, refined across 80 years. He fired. The beam hit Izuku full in the chest. The force was beyond measurement. The impact leveled everything in a cone behind Izuku for 300 meters. Buildings flattened, streets vaporized, infrastructure reduced to dust. The shockwave shattered windows 2 kilometers away. Car alarms screamed across 3 districts. A television camera, mounted on an armored vehicle at the perimeter, cracked its lens from the pressure alone. The smoke cleared. Izuku stood in the same spot. His feet had carved trenches in the ground, 6 inches deep, 4 feet long. His body was braced. His arms were at his sides. A scorch mark ran across his collarbone. His pants were torn at the hem. His face was unchanged. "What's wrong?" he said. "Is that all?" All for One's hands dropped. For the first time in 80 years, since the creation of the first One for All, since the battle that took his face, something that felt like genuine surprise registered in his body language. "Is this the best you have?" Izuku said. He took a step forward. "I'm insulted." He moved. The distance between them was 15 meters. He crossed it in a fraction of a second. The air behind him compressed and detonated, a sonic boom that blew All Might off his feet, that sent debris spiraling outward, that cracked the already ruined street into a web of fractures. His fist connected with All for One's chest. The impact was beyond scale. It wasn't a punch. It was a geological event wearing knuckles. The force transferred through All for One's body and exited through his back as a visible distortion in the air. A ripple that spread outward and flattened every standing structure in a 200-meter radius behind the villain. 3 city blocks ceased to exist. All for One flew backward. His feet left the ground. His body ragdolled through the air, crashed through a concrete wall, bounced off the rubble, and carved a trench through the earth for 40 meters before coming to a stop. His stolen quirks activated. Regeneration. Structural reinforcement, impact redistribution. His body rebuilt itself in real time. Bones refusing, tissue reknitting, damage being parceled out across a dozen stolen healing factors. He stood up. "Interesting," All for One said. Blood ran from his mouth. His suit was destroyed. The regeneration was still working, flesh knitting, bones clicking into place. He raised his hands again. New combination. Force redirection layered with gravity manipulation, layered with telekinetic crushing pressure. He fired. Izuku walked through it. The gravity inverted around him. He planted his feet harder into the earth, and the earth held him. The telekinetic pressure hit his body, and his muscles expanded in response, the demon back surging, and the pressure wave bent around him like water around a stone. The force redirection caught his arms and tried to turn his own momentum against him. He kept walking. His momentum was greater than the force trying to redirect it. His mass was denser than the calculation stealing his velocity. He arrived in front of All for One with dust on his shoulders and absolute patience in his eyes. "You collect strength," Izuku said. "Hundreds of quirks, decades of theft. You made yourself into a warehouse." He grabbed All for One by the collar. But a warehouse full of stolen goods is still just a building. He headbutted All for One. The skull impact was devastating. All for One's head snapped back. His regeneration fired on every level. Izuku headbutted him again and again. 3 impacts in 2 seconds. Each one hit harder than the last. Each one sent cracks spreading through All for One's skull that the regeneration was struggling to keep up with. All for One's body panicked. Every stolen quirk fired at once. A full-body blast of every power he possessed, detonating outward from his core in every direction. A desperate, total release. Izuku took it in the chest. He skidded back 2 feet. His skin reddened. His hair blew back. The ground beneath him vaporized in a perfect circle. He looked down at his chest. He looked at the red marks. He looked at All for One. He smiled. It was the Hanma smile. The one from the doctor's office. The one from the alley where Stain bled. Ancient and predatory and absolutely delighted. "There it is," he said, "something worth the effort." He crossed the distance. All for One raised every defense, force barriers, kinetic shields, hardened air. Izuku punched through all of them. His fist went through 3 layers of stolen protection like a rock through wet paper. He grabbed All for One by the jaw, one hand, Fingers wrapped around the lower mandible. He squeezed. The bone cracked. All for One's stolen healing factors screamed into action. The bone tried to reinforce. The tissue tried to harden. Everything in his body that could heal, adapt, or resist focused on the jaw, the point of contact, the place where 5 fingers were closing with the force of a tectonic event. It was enough. Izuku wrenched, a single, explosive lateral pull. His shoulder rotated, his back flexed. The demon back screamed across his skin. Every muscle in his body unified into a single vector of tearing force. All for One's jaw separated from his face. The sound it made stopped every person in Kamino Ward. Heroes, villains, police, civilians watching from a mile away, camera operators, helicopter pilots. The sound was wet and structural and final. The sound of something that was attached becoming unattached, of bone leaving bone, of the most feared villain in human history being disassembled by a teenager's grip. The jaw came free in Izuku's hand. Tissue trailed from it. Blood sprayed in an arc that painted the rubble. All for One's scream, if a man without a jaw can scream, was a guttural, gurgling howl that echoed off the ruins and carried across the city and into every microphone and every camera and every screen in Japan. All for One collapsed. His body hit the rubble. His hands clawed at his face, at the absence where his jaw had been. His stolen quirks fired in desperation, regeneration, tissue manipulation, bone formation, but the damage was catastrophic and structural and spreading faster than any combination of healing factors could address. The jawbone was gone, the mandible was gone, the connective tissue, the nerves, the blood vessels, all torn clean. He was alive. But what remained was a thing, wheezing on the ground, drowning in its own blood, the most powerful villain in history reduced to a ruin. Izuku held the jaw. He looked at it. He studied the bone, the teeth, the remnants of tissue clinging to the edges. He dropped it. It hit the ground with a wet, final sound. "You built an empire on stolen strength," he said, standing over the crumpled form. "Muscle is everything, and you never had a single gram of your own." He turned. He walked away. He stepped over rubble and past fallen heroes and through smoke that parted around him like it was afraid to touch his skin. Behind him, All for One choked on blood and silence, and the absolute, irrefutable understanding that the thing walking away from him was something his collection of 1,000 quirks could never, ever match. All Might, Toshinori Yagi, sat in the rubble. His true form, gaunt and hollow, was visible to every camera. Blood was on his chin. His hands were shaking. He was broken. The symbol of peace was dead. He watched the teenager walking away from the thing that had broken him. He looked at Izuku's back, the demon back, still alive, still breathing, still screaming in the firelight. He looked at the jaw on the ground. He looked at All for One's ruined body. He looked at the path Izuku had walked, the craters, the trenches, the destroyed city blocks. He put his fist over his chest, the old hero gesture. The one from the early days, before the smiles, before the performance, before the world needed him to be something other than a man. He bowed. Izuku didn't see it. He was already gone. But the cameras saw it. Every camera, every screen, every person in Japan saw the symbol of peace bow to a 16-year-old boy walking away from the ruins of everything. The footage hit the internet before the smoke cleared. The commission's suppression protocols were overwhelmed in minutes. Every platform, every network, every channel, the jaw, All for One's jaw, lying on the ground in the rubble of Kamino Ward, became the most shared image in Japan's internet history. Within an hour, it had a name. The internet called it the verdict. Within 2 hours, it was on merchandise. Unauthorized, instantaneous, the economy of awe responding faster than any government could regulate. Within 6 hours, the comment sections had become a new religion. He tore his jaw off his face with one hand. All for One had 100 quirks. 100. And this kid walked through all of them like they were a light breeze. He walked through the attack. He didn't dodge. He didn't block. He walked. The jaw drop. The literal jaw drop. I need to redefine this phrase forever. All Might bowed. All Might bowed. I am crying. I am actually on the floor. He dropped it on the ground. He looked at it and dropped it. Like trash. I will never recover from this. My children will never recover from this. My descendants will never recover from this. The world turned. The axis shifted, and at the center of the shift, walking through the ruined streets of Kamino Ward toward wherever he decided to go next, Izuku Midoriya moved like a man who had accomplished something slightly less interesting than his morning warm-up. In the weeks that followed, the aftershocks were total. All for One was transported to Tartarus, the maximum security prison for the most dangerous criminals in the world, in a medical pod that kept him breathing but achieved little else. His jawless face was wrapped in regenerative bandages that the medical team changed every 4 hours. His stolen quirks were still active, keeping his body functional through sheer accumulated healing power. But the central nervous damage from the jaw removal had cascaded through his system in ways that medicine had never encountered. He was alive. He was conscious. He was, by every meaningful standard, broken beyond repair. The prison added 17 new security measures specifically for his containment. The warden submitted a supplementary request to the commission. In the event of a breach attempt, do we call pro-heroes or do we call Midoriya Izuku? The commission did not respond to this request. The warden filed it twice more. Shigaraki Tomura, who had been present at Kamino as part of All for One's plan to retrieve him, had fled through Kurogiri's portal the instant Izuku walked through the smoke. He'd seen enough. He sat in the League's bar in a different city and scratched his neck and watched the footage on loop and said nothing for 3 days. When he finally spoke, it was to the phone. To All for One's voice, transmitted from Tartarus through encrypted channels that shouldn't exist. "He tore your jaw off," Shigaraki said. His voice was flat, empty. "Yes." All for One's voice was distorted, jaw reconstructed enough for basic speech through a vocoder implant the prison hadn't authorized and couldn't remove. "He did, and you survived. I survived because he allowed it." Silence. "That boy is what I should have been building toward, Tomura. Everything I collected, every quirk I stole, every weapon I built, he walked through all of it on muscle alone." A pause. "The Hanma bloodline. I knew it existed. I just never believed it could manifest so completely in a single host," Shigaraki scratched. "What do I do?" "Evolve," All for One said. "Become something that can stand in front of him for longer than I did. I'll give you what I have, all of it. Every quirk, every stolen power, every trick and weapon I've accumulated across 80 years. And then you discover whether any of it matters." The call ended. Shigaraki stared at the screen showing Izuku walking away from the camera. He stared at the jaw on the ground. He stared at the back of a boy who had rendered the most powerful villain in history into a jawless vegetable. He scratched his neck. He bled. He smiled. The smile was wrong. It was the smile of a man walking toward a cliff with his eyes wide open. Back at UA, life resumed with the peculiar normalcy that only extreme events can create. The students of Class 1A had passed through something: the training camp, the attack, the footage from Kamino. They had been bystanders to a series of events that rewrote the rules of their world, and now they were trying to figure out what those rules looked like with the old ones gone. Midnight appeared at Izuku's dormitory room 3 days after Kamino. She knocked. He opened the door. She was wearing civilian clothes. A dark blouse, fitted slacks, her hair down instead of its usual hero costume style. She had a bottle of wine and the expression of a woman who had assembled all available information, run every possible scenario, and arrived at a conclusion she was completely comfortable with. "I watched the Kamino footage 14 times, she said. Izuku leaned against the doorframe. His arms crossed. He took up the entire frame. "I need you to understand something," she continued. Her voice was steady. Her eyes were steady. Everything about her was steady. She was brilliant, sharp, experienced, and entirely in command of herself. "I am a teacher. You are a student. What I'm about to do violates approximately 19 professional codes and 3 sections of the Hero Licensing Act." Sounds boring. It would be. Except I don't care anymore. She held up the wine. "I watched you tear a man's jaw off with one hand. I watched you walk through attacks that leveled city blocks. And I realized something." She paused. "I understand everything." "I know you do." "Then stop leaning against the door and let me in." He stepped aside. She walked in. The door closed. In the hallway, 40 meters away, Aizawa Shota was walking toward his office. He saw the door close. He saw Midnight's civilian clothes. He saw the wine. He turned around. He faced the wall. He studied the wall with an intensity that suggested the wall contained the secrets of the universe. "Nope," he said to the wall. "I saw nothing." He walked away. Present Mike, who had been following Aizawa to discuss lesson plans, watched his friend stare at a wall, say nope, and walk in the opposite direction. What was that about? Nothing. I'm going to sleep for 100 years. It's 2 in the afternoon. I know what I said. The news spread through the dormitory the way all dormitory news spreads, through walls, through whispers, through the specific vibration of gossip that travels at the speed of disbelief. Kaminari was the first to find out. He was walking past Izuku's room the next morning and saw Midnight leaving, in civilian clothes, at 7 a.m. With her hair undone, his brain attempted to process this information. The attempt failed. Sparks popped from his temples. He stumbled backward into the wall, slid down it, and sat on the floor with his mouth open and his eyes vacant. Jiru found him there 10 minutes later. Kaminari, why are you sitting on the floor? I have seen things, Kaminari whispered. I cannot unsee them. What things? Things that prove God is real, and he has favorites. Jiru looked at the door he was staring at. She looked at the direction he'd been walking. She connected the dots. Her earphone jacks went rigid. Her face went pink. She grabbed Kaminari by the collar and dragged him away before he could say anything louder. Mineta found out at lunch. Kaminari told him in a whisper that could be heard across the cafeteria. Mineta's reaction was violent, immediate, and deeply pathetic. That's impossible, he screamed, standing on his chair. Midnight. She's a teacher. That's what happens when you can tear All for One's jaw off, Kirishima said from the next table, chewing his lunch with the calm of a man who had accepted the fundamental unfairness of the universe months ago. Bro, I've made peace with it. You should too. Make peace with, I will never. Sit down, Mineta, Asui said. Her tongue flicked. You're embarrassing yourself. I'm always embarrassing myself. That's my entire identity. At the far table, Izuku ate his lunch. A full roast chicken, 2 bowls of rice, a salad the size of a planter box, and 3 rice balls, wrapped in seaweed made by Uraraka Ochako, who sat across from him with her own lunch untouched, and her face a complicated shade of red that suggested she had also heard the news and was processing it in real time. The rice balls are good today, Izuku said. Thank you, Uraraka said. Her voice was small. Izuku, can I ask you something? Yes, Midnight. Are you? She's strong. Her quirk has unique applications. Her physical conditioning is above average. She meets several criteria. Criteria for what? The future of my bloodline. Uraraka's chopsticks slipped from her hands. They clattered on the table. She stared at him with an expression that contained approximately 47 emotions, most of them contradictory, all of them intense. Your bloodline. The strongest creature on Earth requires heirs that can match his potential. The selection process is ongoing. Uraraka opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, closed it again. She looked like a fish that had been pulled from the ocean and was being shown a spreadsheet. I make you rice balls every day, she said. Her voice cracked on the last word. Izuku looked at her. He studied her face. The round cheeks, the brown hair, the wide eyes that held something so honest and so fierce that it cut through the noise of everything else. You do, he said. They're good. She waited. He went back to his chicken. That's all, she squeaked. For now. She picked up her chopsticks. Her hands shook. Her face was a bonfire. Something in her chest that she'd been carrying since the entrance exam, since the rice ball after the 0-pointer, since the first time he said good, burned hotter than it ever had. She would come back to that, for now, approximately 900 times over the next month. Each time it would mean something slightly different. Each time it would mean more. Mirko's situation escalated 3 weeks after Kamino. She had been training with Izuku every morning at UA for 2 months. Their sparring sessions had become a fixture of the campus. Students gathered at windows, faculty found excuses to walk past the courtyard, and the maintenance team had given up repairing the stone pavers and simply roped off the area with signs that read, Active Training Zone, enter at own risk. Mirko had gotten faster, stronger. The daily sessions against someone she couldn't hurt had forced her body to adapt in ways that normal training never could. Her kicks were hitting harder, her reflexes were sharper. She was, by every measure, operating at a level above where she'd been when they started. She was still nowhere close to him. She knew it. The knowledge should have been maddening. Instead, it was the most motivating thing she'd ever experienced. On the 23rd morning, she kicked him in the ribs with everything she had. A heel kick, her strongest strike, the one that had put A-rank villains through walls, the one she saved for targets she needed to end. Izuku didn't block. He let it hit. His ribs absorbed the impact. His body shifted an inch to the left. That was all. Mirko stood with her leg extended, panting, sweat dripping from her rabbit ears. She stared at the spot where she'd hit him. She stared at the absolute absence of damage. "You took that on purpose," she said. "I take everything on purpose. You wanted to see if I'd gotten stronger. You have. Strong enough?" Izuku looked at her. She held his gaze. Her golden eyes were bright. Her body was trembling. The aftermath of maximum output, the shaking that comes when every muscle has fired and there's nothing left. "For what?" he asked. "For whatever this is." The courtyard was empty, except for the two of them. The morning light was orange and warm. Mirko's ears were up, alert, focused, pointing directly at him like antennae tuned to a single frequency. She stepped forward. She grabbed the front of his shirt. She was 5'2". He was over 6 feet tall. She had to reach up. She pulled him down to her level. "I've been fighting my whole life," she said. Her voice was rough. "Alone. Every fight, every win, every scar. Alone." Her grip tightened. "And then you showed up and caught my kick like it was nothing and told me to bear your child like you were ordering lunch, and you made me feel..." "Feel what?" "Like there was someone I couldn't beat, and I wasn't angry about it." She kissed him. It lasted 4 seconds. Her ears flattened. His hands didn't move. They stayed at his sides, relaxed, unhurried. When she pulled back, her face was flushed and her eyes were wet, and her grip on his shirt had nearly torn the fabric. "There," she said. "Now you know." Izuku looked at her. He studied her face, the strength in her jaw, the defiance in her eyes, the absolute refusal to be anything less than exactly who she was. "Your legs could crack 2 mountains now," he said. "Maybe 3 with proper nutrition." Mirko's eye twitched. "I just kissed you and you're talking about my nutrition? Nutrition is foundational too." She kicked him in the shin, her strongest kick. Point blank, he didn't move. She hopped backward, holding her foot. "Ow, God, what are your bones made of?" "The same thing everything else is made of. Superiority." She stared at him. He stared at her. A bird sang somewhere in the courtyard. The morning light warmed the cracked pavers around them. Mirko burst out laughing. It was loud and unrestrained and surprised her more than anyone. She laughed until she bent over and braced her hands on her knees and her rabbit ears flopped forward. Izuku watched her laugh. Something crossed his face. Brief, barely visible. If you'd blinked, you would have missed it. It might have been amusement. It might have been something warmer. "You're acceptable," he said. "Acceptable? I'm the number 5 hero. You were the number 5 hero. Now you're mine." Mirko's laughter stopped. Her face went red. Her ears shot straight up. "Yours," she repeated. "Unless you have an objection." She looked at the ground. She looked at the sky. She looked at her hands, which were shaking again, but for different reasons now. "I hate you," she said. "I know. I'm still going to fight you every morning. I know." She walked toward the gate. She made it 10 steps. She stopped. She turned around. "If you ever call me acceptable again, I'll kick you so hard. It still won't move me." She screamed. She kicked the gatepost. The gatepost broke. She walked through the broken gate and down the street, muttering curses in 3 languages. Izuku watched her go. He picked up a fragment of the gatepost. He looked at it. He put it in his pocket. He went back to his push-ups. Mount Lady made her move 2 weeks later. The commission held a debriefing in Tokyo, a mandatory session for all heroes ranked in the top 20, discussing the Kamino incident and its implications for hero society. Izuku was invited as an observer. Nobody believed this. Observers don't get engraved invitations hand-delivered by a commission courier. The debriefing was held in a government building with marble floors and ceilings high enough to echo. 24 pro heroes sat around a conference table that cost more than most people's houses. The discussion was about restructuring the hero rankings, redistributing patrol zones, and addressing the public's growing unease. Izuku sat in the back row. He'd been given a chair against the wall. He'd been there for 40 minutes. He'd listened to approximately 9 minutes of useful information and 31 minutes of people avoiding the subject they all knew they needed to discuss. Mount Lady, Takeyama Yu, cornered him in the hallway during the break. She was 6 feet tall in her civilian height, blonde, blue-eyed, a face that launched magazine covers, and a body that, at 65 feet, could stop traffic in every sense of the phrase. Her gigantification quirk made her one of the most visually spectacular heroes in Japan. She was aware of this. She used it. She was smart enough to know that beauty was a tool and shameless enough to wield it without apology. She planted herself in front of Izuku while he was walking toward the vending machine. She was wearing heels that brought her to eye level. She did not beat around any bushes. "You're Midoriya Izuku," she said. "You're Mount Lady. I've been watching your footage for 3 weeks. Most people have. I'm not most people." She stepped closer, close enough that her perfume reached him. It smelled expensive. "I'm someone who recognizes opportunity, and you are the biggest opportunity in Japan right now." Izuku studied her, the bone structure, the muscle tone visible beneath her civilian outfit, the confidence in her posture. He looked at her the way he looked at everything, with total comprehension and zero pretense. "Size and force," he said. "Your quirk multiplies your physical dimensions. Your strength scales proportionally. At maximum size, your body can exert force comparable to heavy machinery." Mount Lady blinked. "Yes, that's technically accurate. Respectable bloodline contribution." She blinked again. "Did you just evaluate me genetically?" "I evaluate everything." She processed this for 3 seconds. Her eyes narrowed. Her lips curved into a smile that was both amused and predatory, and suggested she was completely aware of what she was walking into and had made her peace with it long before she crossed the hallway. "Okay," she said. Izuku looked at her. "Okay?" I said okay. She pulled a card from her pocket, her personal number, handwritten on the back of a Mount Lady branded business card. She tucked it into his shirt pocket with 2 fingers and a deliberate slowness that turned heads in the hallway. "Call me when you're ready to evaluate me further." She walked away. Her heels clicked on the marble. Every hero in the hallway watched her go. Half of them looked at Izuku. The other half looked at the card in his pocket. Hawks, who had been leaning against the opposite wall watching the entire exchange with a cup of coffee and a grin, said, "You know, I used to think I was smooth." Izuku looked at him. "Used to," Hawks repeated. He sipped his coffee. "Past tense, I've been dethroned." "You were never on the throne." Hawks laughed, a real laugh, the kind he rarely let out in public. "Fair enough, big man, fair enough." The harem, because that's what it was, and everyone in UA and the hero community knew it, and pretending otherwise was an exercise in self-deception that nobody was willing to commit to, established itself with the efficiency of something that was always going to happen. Mirko visited every morning. She trained with Izuku. She fought him. She lost. She got better. And she stayed for breakfast afterward, sitting across from him in the dormitory kitchen, eating eggs and rice, in a silence that was comfortable in a way she'd never experienced with another person. Midnight existed in his orbit with the grace of a woman who had chosen her situation and refused to be embarrassed by it. She was brilliant, sharp, and adult enough to understand the dynamics. When other faculty gave her looks, she returned them with the calm smile of someone who had watched the Camino footage 14 times and arrived at a conclusion that required zero justification. Mount Lady was the most public about it. She was seen arriving at UA in her civilian clothes 3 times in 2 weeks. She posted a photo on social media, her hand, a coffee cup, and in the background, just barely visible, the edge of Izuku's shoulder. The internet lost its mind. Kaminari handled the revelation the way Kaminari handled every overwhelming stimulus, by short-circuiting. He was found in the common room, lying on the couch, staring at the ceiling, whispering, 3. He has 3. 3 pro heroes. 3. Jiru sat on the opposite couch, plugging her earphone jacks into her own ears to block out the sound of Kaminari's existential crisis. Mineta had gone quiet. Truly quiet. The silence was more unsettling than his usual behavior. He sat at his desk in class with his hands folded and his eyes distant, and the expression of a man who has looked upon the face of God and been found wanting. Kirishima, who had become the unofficial translator between Izuku and the rest of humanity, addressed the class during a free period. "Guys," he said, "I know this is a lot. I know the situation is unprecedented, But here's the thing, Midoriya earned this. He literally ripped the strongest villain in history apart with his bare hands. He walked through attacks that leveled city blocks. He doesn't need any of us. The fact that he lets us exist around him is already a miracle. That's the most terrifying pep talk I've ever heard, Sero said. I know, Kirishima said, flexing one arm. His hardening had tripled in density since the start of the year. But it's also true. And honestly, if any of you could do what he does, you'd have a harem too. Silence. He's right, Tokoyami said from the corner. His shadow entity, Dark Shadow, nodded solemnly from behind his cloak. Thank you, Dark Shadow. See? Even the literal shadow entity agrees. The classroom processed this information the way a stomach processes a meal it wasn't prepared for. Slowly, painfully, and with significant amounts of gas. The semester progressed. Training intensified. The world outside UA shifted in ways that made the news cycle feel like a fever dream. All Might retired. Publicly. Permanently. He stood at a podium in front of the Diet Building, Japan's parliament, in his true form, thin and hollow and honest, and told the nation that the symbol of peace was finished, that the embers of One for All were gone, that the man behind the muscle had always been just a man, and the man was tired, and the time had come for the world to stand without a single point of support. The reaction was nuclear. Fear, anger, grief. Hero stocks crashed. Crime spiked in 36 prefectures within 48 hours. The public needed a replacement symbol. They needed to believe someone was still standing between them and the dark. They looked at Izuku Midoriya. Of course they did. He was the only person alive who had beaten the thing that beat All Might. The footage was everywhere. The jaw was everywhere. The memes, the clips, the auto-tuned remixes, everywhere. He was 17 years old and the most famous human being in Japan by a margin that defied measurement. He did not address the public. He did not make a statement. He did not appear at press conferences or charity events or memorial services. He trained, he ate, he attended class. He existed on his own terms and gave the world exactly nothing it hadn't earned. The public obsessed about this. The silence became its own mythology. Every analyst, every commentator, every talking head on every news channel had a theory about what Midoriya Izuku wanted, what he planned, what he represented. Hawks, in a rare televised interview, was asked directly, "What do you think Midoriya Izuku represents for the future of hero society?" Hawks leaned back. He smiled. "He represents the future of human evolution, and the rest of us are just watching it happen." That doesn't answer the question. Sure it does, you just don't like the answer. Meanwhile, underground, Shigaraki was changing. All for One's transfer had begun in Tartarus through channels that prison security would never detect. Stolen quirks, layered and compressed, transmitted through frequencies that human technology hadn't categorized yet. The power flowed into Shigaraki like water into a dry riverbed. His body broke and rebuilt. His decay evolved, no longer requiring all 5 fingers, no longer requiring contact, extending outward in waves that dissolved everything they touched. He suffered. He screamed in back alley medical facilities while doctors that the commission didn't know existed rebuilt his body to hold powers it was never designed to contain. His bones fractured and healed denser. His muscles tore and regrew thicker. His mind expanded to accommodate the accumulated knowledge of 100 stolen quirks. It took 3 months. When it was done, Shigaraki Tomura was something the world had never seen, a vessel for every stolen cracking. All for One had ever collected, layered over a decay ability that could dissolve a city, piloting a body that had been rebuilt from the molecular level to withstand its own power. He tested himself on a Tuesday afternoon. He went to an abandoned industrial district outside of Osaka. He touched the ground. The ground dissolved, then the buildings, then the foundations. Then the soil beneath the foundations. A perfect circle of devastation, 300 meters in diameter, spreading outward from his fingertips at the speed of thought. Everything within the circle ceased to exist. Steel, concrete, earth. Air itself seemed to thin as the particles that composed it were unmade. He stood in the center of a crater that looked like something had taken a bite out of the earth. He smiled. He scratched his neck. He didn't bleed. The skin was too tough now. "Midoriya Izuku," he said to the empty crater, "I have something for you." The war started on a Friday. Shigaraki and the Liberation Army, 10,000 strong, merged with the remnants of the League, hit Jaku City at noon. The attack was coordinated, massive, and designed to overwhelm the hero response through sheer scale. Liberation soldiers flooded the streets. High-end villains, Dabi, Toga, Twice Skeptic, Redestro, each led a division. The city's infrastructure collapsed in minutes, and at the center of it all, Shigaraki walked forward, touching things, and things stopped existing. Heroes responded. Every agency within range deployed. Endeavor, now the #1 hero by default, a rank he'd wanted his entire life and now wore like a shirt made of thorns, led the response force. He hit Shigaraki's vanguard with walls of flame that turned city blocks into infernos. He was powerful. He was driven. He was everything a #1 hero should be. He was fighting a war that had already been decided by someone who wasn't there yet. Izuku arrived 30 minutes in. He'd been eating breakfast when the news broke. Uraraka had made rice balls, 3 of them, seaweed-wrapped, still warm. He ate all 3. He watched the footage on the common room television. He stood up. He removed his shirt. The demon back awoke. Izuku, Uraraka said. Her voice was steady, scared but steady. Be safe. He looked at her. I'm always safe. I know. Be safe anyway. He left. He arrived at Jaku City on foot. He walked through the police perimeter. He walked through the hero staging area. He walked past Endeavor, who was coordinating the counterattack from a mobile command post. Then the #1 hero looked at Izuku, looked at the shirtless torso, looked at the demon back screaming between his shoulder blades, and stepped aside without a word. Where is he? Izuku asked. Center of the city, Endeavor said. He's dissolving everything. We can't get close. I can. He walked into the war. The Liberation Army was a sea of bodies. Thousands of soldiers, each one Quirk enhanced, each one committed to the cause of total Quirk freedom. They filled the streets. They held positions. They fought with the coordination of a military force. Izuku walked through them. The first rank charged. 20 soldiers, varied quirks. He backhanded the first 3. They went sideways. Launched off their feet by the force, unconscious before they hit the walls. The 4th tried to grab him. He grabbed the man's arm and threw him into the 5th, 6th, and 7th. All 4 landed in a heap 30 meters away. The 8th through 12th had ranged quirks, fire, energy blasts, stone projectiles. They fired simultaneously. 5 attacks converging on one target, Izuku clapped his hands. The shockwave atomized the incoming attacks and hit the 5 soldiers behind them hard enough to blow them off the street entirely. They went through storefronts, through walls, through parked vehicles. Glass rained. Car alarms screamed. The 13th through 20th ran. He kept walking. The streets of Jaku became a gallery of his passage. Soldiers lay in crumpled heaps against walls. Vehicles had been repurposed as projectiles, thrown at groups too large to bother with individually. One intersection showed the aftermath of an encounter with a squad of 30 Liberation soldiers. 30 bodies, 30 different states of unconsciousness, and a crater in the street where Izuku had stomped the ground hard enough to launch all of them airborne simultaneously. Redestro, the CEO of Detnerat, the secret leader of the Liberation Army, found Izuku in the commercial district. Redestro's quirk, stress, converted emotional pressure into physical power. Months of stress, fear, and fury had built up inside him like a dam. His body crackled with red energy. His suit had torn from the expansion of his enhanced musculature. You think one person can stop a revolution? Redestro screamed. His fist burned with stress energy. The pavement beneath his feet cracked. Izuku looked at him. He studied the energy output, the muscle expansion, the trembling rage. One person already has, he said. Sit down. Redestro charged. He threw a punch loaded with every watt of stress his body had accumulated. The fist connected with Izuku's chest. Izuku didn't move. Redestro's hand shattered. The bones in his fist fractured against Izuku's pectoral muscle the way glass fractures against stone. The stress energy discharged. All of it, the entire accumulated reservoir, and dissipated harmlessly across the surface of Izuku's skin. Absorbed. Rejected. Irrelevant. Redestro looked at his broken hand. He looked at the undamaged chest. The comprehension crossed his face in real time. The understanding that everything he had built, every soldier he had recruited, every plan he had laid, every philosophy he had preached, was exactly as meaningful as a wave hitting a cliff. Izuku flicked him on the forehead. The same motion he'd used on Shinso at the sports festival. The same lazy, dismissive gesture. Destro flew backward. 50 meters, through a wall, through the room behind the wall, through the wall behind that room. He came to rest in a pile of debris in what had been a department store, surrounded by mannequins and falling price tags. Unconscious, Izuku kept walking. He found Dabi on a rooftop. The cremation villain was raining blue fire down on a hero rescue team 3 blocks away. The flames were hotter than before. Evolution through fury, the burning self-hatred turned outward at maximum temperature. Izuku jumped. The rooftop cratered under his launch. He landed beside Dabi. The impact broke the roof's support structure. Both of them dropped 2 feet as the surface gave way. Dabi turned. Blue flame erupted from his arms. Izuku grabbed both of Dabi's wrists. He held them together. The flame poured over his hands and his forearms and did nothing. Dabi's fire met Izuku's skin and died. "You're still burning yourself," Izuku said. He looked at the scars, the reopened wounds, the staples popping free from the heat. "You haven't changed, you've just gotten louder." "Shut up!" Loudness is what the weak mistake for strength. He bent Dabi's wrists inward. The cremation villain's own fire redirected, pointed at his own chest. Dabi screamed. The flame hit his torso. His costume ignited. His skin blistered. Izuku released him. Dabi dropped, rolling, smothering his own flames. He looked up at the figure standing over him with zero expression and absolute authority. "Stay here," Izuku said. "Someone will collect you." He jumped off the rooftop, twice. Toga, Skeptic, Geeton, Trumpet. One by one, the high-end commanders of the Liberation Army fell. Some fought. Some ran. Some tried both. The result was the same. 11 minutes after Izuku entered Jakku City, the Liberation Army's command structure was gone. 3,000 soldiers who had marched in formation that morning were now fleeing in every direction. Pro-heroes, bewildered and exhausted, moved in to round up the retreating remnants. Then Shigaraki found him, or he found Shigaraki. It was impossible to tell which. They converged in the city center, a plaza that had been a commercial district 3 hours ago and was now a crater field. Buildings leaned, streets had been dissolved, the air smelled like ozone and endings. Shigaraki stood in the center of the largest crater. He was transformed. The all-for-one transfer had rebuilt him. His body was larger, denser, wrapped in regenerated tissue that healed as fast as it was damaged. His white hair hung in his face, his red eyes burned. His fingers, all 10, twitched with decay energy that distorted the air around them like heat shimmer. "Midoriya Izuku," Shigaraki said. "Shigaraki Tomura." They stood 30 meters apart. The ground between them was dead, dissolved to a fine gray powder that drifted in the wind. Everything within Shigaraki's reach had ceased to exist. The plaza looked like the surface of the moon. "I've been given everything," Shigaraki said. His voice was different now, layered, resonant, carrying the harmonic of 100 stolen quirks speaking through one throat. Every quirk he ever collected, every weapon, every power, heed me everything. "And you're still standing in my shadow." Shigaraki's eye twitched. "I'm going to kill you." "No," Izuku said. "You're going to try." Shigaraki attacked. He was fast, faster than before. The stolen quirks propelled him. Speed enhancement, kinetic amplification, air manipulation. All of it layered into a single burst of movement that closed the 30-meter gap in a heartbeat. His hand reached for Izuku's face. 5 fingers spread. Decay active. The air itself dissolved around his palm. Izuku caught the hand. The decay hit his skin. It tried to dissolve. The energy spread across his palm. Gray, corrosive, hungry, eating into the surface layer of his flesh. For 1 second, Shigaraki's eyes went wide with hope. Izuku looked at his hand. He looked at the gray energy crawling across his skin. He watched it probe, push, try to break through. "My body rejects it," he said. His voice was flat. His expression was bored. "No disease, no poison, and no quirk can override my will." The decay stalled. It spread to the edges of his palm and stopped. It tried to go further. It couldn't. The skin beneath it was too dense, too alive, too fundamentally superior. The gray energy flickered, dimmed, and died. Shigaraki's hope died with it. Izuku headbutted him. The impact launched Shigaraki's entire upper body backward while his feet stayed planted. His spine bent at a right angle. The stolen quirks in his body fired, regeneration, structural reinforcement, impact absorption, and they held. Barely. He snapped back upright, teeth bloody, eyes blazing. He screamed and threw everything. Air cannon. force multiplication, gravity inversion, kinetic release. Every stolen power that All for One had spent 80 years accumulating, fired through a body rebuilt from the molecular level to channel them all simultaneously. A composite attack that visibly cracked the air itself, a beam of compressed force that tore a trench through the earth and hit Izuku in the chest with enough power to level the entire district. Izuku stumbled half a step. His rear foot slid 6 inches through the dissolved ground. His arms came up. The force rolled over his body and around it and past it. The buildings behind him, the ones that were still standing, collapsed from the residual energy alone. He lowered his arms. "There it is," he said, and the smile came. The ancient one, the wrong one, the Hanma smile. Something real. He crossed the distance. One stride. His foot hit the ground and the impact sounded like a cannon shot. He grabbed Shigaraki by the face, fingers spread over the skull, palm pressed against the forehead. The decay fired against his hand. It was rejected. Again, Shigaraki clawed. He hit Izuku with stolen force blasts at point-blank range. He hit him with gravity manipulation. He hit him with kinetic amplification and telekinetic crushing pressure and everything else in the collection. The attacks connected. They hit Izuku's chest, his arms, his torso. He kept holding. His grip tightened. "Do you understand now?" Izuku said, holding Shigaraki at arm's length, feeling the villain's skull compress between his fingers. "This is the difference between us." He threw Shigaraki downward, straight into the earth. Every muscle in his arm, his shoulder, his back, his core, unified into a single vector of downward force. The demon back screamed. The face between his shoulder blades opened its mouth, and the muscles of his body produced something that looked like a roar, frozen in flesh. Shigaraki hit the ground at a speed that transcended impact and became something geological. The earth cratered, 2 meters deep, 3 meters wide. The shockwave from the impact radiated outward in concentric rings that rippled through the already destroyed plaza like waves in water. Buildings 100 meters away shifted on their foundations. Windows 2 blocks out shattered simultaneously. Shigaraki's body inverted. His legs broke, both femurs snapping from the compression, the tibias fracturing in compound breaks that pushed bone through skin. His spine compressed and 3 vertebrae collapsed. His arms, which he'd raised to protect his head, bent backward at the elbows. He lay in the crater. His stolen quirks fired. Regeneration, structural repair, tissue reconstruction. His body tried to rebuild. It was trying hard. Bones clicked back into place. Tissue knit. Muscle reformed. Izuku reached into the crater. He grabbed Shigaraki by the throat. He pulled him out. He held him at eye level. Shigaraki's face was a ruin. Blood ran from his eyes, his nose, his ears. His jaw was dislocated. His decay was still firing. Pathetic bursts of gray energy that hit Izuku's arm and died on contact, over and over like a broken machine running its last cycle. "You told All for One I tore the Nomu apart with my hands," Izuku said. "That you were insulted by his best weapon." He studied Shigaraki's ruined face. The red eyes that were still open, still conscious, still burning with something that might have been rage, or might have been awe, or might have been the final grudging recognition of absolute inferiority. "Now I've seen yours. I'm more insulted." He dropped him. Shigaraki hit the ground. He lay there. His stolen quirks continued their futile repair work. His body twitched. His fingers scraped the dust. Izuku stepped over him. The Liberation Army, 3,000 soldiers who had watched their ultimate weapon, their evolved leader, their vessel of 100 stolen quirks, get crumpled like a paper cup and discarded like one, broke. The formation shattered. The discipline evaporated. 3,000 trained fighters turned and fled in every direction, abandoning positions, abandoning weapons, abandoning each other. Pro-heroes moved in. Endeavor's flames corralled retreating soldiers. Hawks' feathers disabled dozens at range. Every hero on the field spent the next hour rounding up a scattered enemy that had lost the will to resist. The war was over. Izuku had ended it in 11 minutes. The aftermath was measured in infrastructure damage, hospital admissions, and the fundamental rewiring of Japanese society. Shigaraki was recovered from the crater, alive, and transported to Tartarus. He was placed in the cell adjacent to All for Ones. The 2 most dangerous villains in history, separated by 6 inches of reinforced steel, unable to speak to each other, unable to move, unable to do anything except exist with the knowledge of what had happened to them. The warden finally received a response to his earlier request. The commission's letter read, "In the event of a breach attempt, contact UA Academy and request the deployment of student Midoriya Izuku, Class 1A." The warden framed the letter and hung it in his office. Japan's Hero Society convened the largest emergency session in its history. Every ranked hero, every commission official, every government liaison. The conference room was a cathedral of tension. 200 people seated in tiered rows facing a central podium. The commission chair, a gray man with gray hair and a gray expression that suggested he'd been running on gray thoughts for approximately 6 months, opened the proceedings. The purpose of this session is to formally assess and categorize the threat posed by, or the asset represented by, Midoriya Izuku, student of UA High School, Class 1A. Aizawa was there. He represented UA. He sat in the front row with a single file folder. His expression was its usual state, tired, flat, and concealing depths of exasperation that only a man who had spent a year teaching the strongest creature on Earth could accumulate. Hawks was in the back, leaning. Always leaning, his wings folded behind his chair like a cape. He had a coffee. He looked comfortable. He looked like a man watching a group of people try to put a label on a hurricane. The discussion lasted 4 hours. Proposals were made, classifications were debated. 3 separate committee members used the phrase unprecedented threat level. 2 others used uncontainable asset. One, a retired hero who had clearly been dragged out of comfortable obscurity for this meeting, suggested declaring him a national treasure and hoping for the best. He was not taken seriously. He was also the most correct person in the room. Aizawa spoke once. He put his file on the table. He opened it. Inside were 4 documents: the Kamino footage transcript, the Stain incident report, the sports festival records, and a single page with 3 sentences. Midoriya Izuku has never killed a hero. He has never attacked a civilian. Every act of violence he has committed has been against villains. The commission chair looked at the page. That doesn't make him safe. I know, Aizawa said. That's what the file is arguing. Murmurs rippled through the room. The chair leaned forward. Then what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you stop trying to categorize him and start trying to coexist with him, because you don't have another option. Hawks spoke from the back of the room, his voice carried without effort. Gentlemen, he set his coffee down. He tore All for One's jaw off and walked away. He dropped Shigaraki in a crater and stepped over him. He walked through a composite attack that leveled 3 city blocks and his shirt got dirty. You are sitting in this room debating whether to call him a hero or a weapon or a threat. He stood up, his wings spread slightly, an unconscious gesture, the way a bird fluffs its feathers when it wants to be heard. He's above us, all of us, and he's 17. So the real question here isn't how to handle him, it's what happens when he decides he's bored with us. The room went cold. Nobody spoke for 11 seconds. Hawk sat down. He picked up his coffee. The commission created a new classification, Sovereign Class, a designation that had never existed before and would, in all likelihood, never be applied to anyone else. It meant, in bureaucratic terms, that Izuku Midoriya operated outside the hero ranking system, outside the commission's authority, and outside the jurisdiction of any law enforcement body. In plain terms, it meant the government had officially acknowledged that it could not control him, and was choosing to formalize that reality rather than fight it. When Aizawa returned to UA and told Izuku about the designation, they were standing in the hallway outside the faculty lounge. Aizawa's hands were in his pockets. His eyes were tired. The commission created a new category for you, Aizawa said. Sovereign Class. Izuku looked at him. He'd been eating an apple. He took another bite, chewed, swallowed. Did they think I needed their category to exist? No, Aizawa said. I think they needed it to feel better about theirs. Izuku looked at him. A beat passed. Something crossed his face. Brief, barely there, gone before it could be named. If it had been named, the closest word would have been respect. You're smarter than you look, Eraserhead. Aizawa walked away. His back was straight. His stride was steady. He would never admit to anyone under any circumstances how good that felt. But his step was lighter for the rest of the day, and Present Mike noticed, and Aizawa told him to shut up, and Present Mike laughed, and the hallway felt normal for the first time in weeks. Strength is justice, Izuku said to the empty corridor, finishing his apple. Strength is absolute. He threw the core into a trash can 20 meters away. It landed clean. All Might visited on a Tuesday. He came in his true form. He didn't pretend anymore. The muscle was gone. The smile was gone. What remained was Toshinori Yagi, a tall, thin man with sunken eyes and a gentle face that had been carrying the weight of a civilization for 3 decades and had finally been allowed to put it down. He found Izuku on the training grounds. Alone. Early evening. The light was amber and fading. Izuku was standing in the center of the field, arms at his sides, eyes closed. He was feeling the wind against his skin, reading its direction, its temperature, its meaning. A body like his processed the world through every cell. All Might sat on the bench at the field's edge. He waited. He was good at waiting now. Patience was the only thing retirement had given him that he valued. After 5 minutes, Izuku opened his eyes. He turned. He looked at the thin man on the bench. He walked over. He sat down. The bench groaned beneath his weight. They sat in silence for a moment. "I want to tell you something," All Might said. His voice was quiet, honest. The hero voice was gone. The booming confidence, the theatrical certainty. What remained was just a man. "I want to tell you about One for All, about the burden, about what it cost." "I know what it cost," Izuku said. "I can see it in your body. The muscle deterioration, the organ damage, the loss of mass over time. You burned yourself to fuel a quirk that was never designed for a body this fragile." All Might smiled. Sad and true. "You're right, I was chosen for it, not designed for it. The power was too much. It always was. But the world needed someone to carry it, and I was willing." He paused. "I spent 30 years being the symbol of peace. Do you know what that means? It means you were a performance." "Yes, exactly." All Might looked at his hands, thin, veined, the hands of an old man who was only 50. "A performance. I smiled because the world needed me to smile. I fought because the world needed me to fight. And when my body broke, I kept performing because the alternative was letting everyone see the truth. That you were just a man. That I was just a man." He exhaled. "And then you came along." Izuku said nothing. "I've watched you since the sludge villain, since you split the sky with a hand clap, since you walked into the USJ and tore the Nomu apart, since you took the sports festival by yourself, since Stain, since Camino." He turned to look at Izuku. "You terrify me. You always have. Most people are terrified. Most people should be. But here's the thing, young man." All Might's voice steadied. "I've watched you for a year, and I've never once seen you attack the innocent." Izuku was quiet. "Never once," All Might repeated. "You've broken villains, you've dismantled criminal organizations, you've ended wars, and every single time, the only people who suffered were the ones who chose to stand in your way." He paused. "That matters. I want you to know that it matters." The training ground was empty. The evening light was orange. 2 people on a bench, one who had carried the world and been broken by it, and one who could carry it without feeling the weight. "I told you I didn't need your parlor trick," Izuku said. "I know. You built a world that needed a symbol, a performance, someone to make people feel safe by pretending invincibility is real." Izuku rolled his shoulder. The demon back shifted beneath his shirt, a ripple of muscle, alive, permanent. "Invincibility isn't a symbol, it's a biological fact. It's earned in every cell, every fiber, every rep." All Might looked at him for a long time. The amber light caught his hollowed cheeks. His eyes were bright, brighter than they'd been in years. "Then what are you?" Izuku stood. He looked at the training grounds, at the city beyond the walls, at the horizon where the sun was going down and the sky was turning from gold to purple to the deep blue of evening. "The strongest creature on the face of this earth," he said. "I don't need to be anything else." He walked away, across the training ground, toward the dormitory. His silhouette was massive against the sunset, wider and taller than any 17-year-old had the right to be, a shape that the evening light couldn't contain. All Might watched him go. He sat on the bench in the fading light. He stayed for a long time after the figure had disappeared inside. When he finally stood, he was smiling. The old kind, the real kind. The kind that wasn't a performance and wasn't for anyone else. "I spent 30 years being the symbol of peace," he said to the empty field. "And in the end, the strongest person I ever met was the one who never needed any symbol at all." He walked away. His footsteps were light. For the first time in years, his chest didn't hurt. The last weeks of the semester moved with the speed of things that are ending. The sovereign class designation was published. The public reaction was a tornado: fear, awe, worship, outrage, fascination. Online forums split into factions. Those who called Izuku a hero, those who called him a monster, those who called him a god, and those who had given up trying to call him anything and simply posted the jaw clip with no caption over and over because no words existed that could add meaning to what the image already contained. Izuku trended on every platform simultaneously. The memes were immediate, eternal, and frequently beautiful. A clip of him walking through All for One's composite attack set to slow, bass-heavy music accumulated 40 million views in 3 days. A side-by-side comparison of the Nomu dismantling and the Shigaraki crater, titled Year 1 versus Year 1 Later, became the most shared hero-related content in internet history. Someone edited the jaw removal scene to look like a Renaissance painting. It was purchased by a gallery in Roppongi for an undisclosed amount. The students of Class 1A had been changed. Every one of them. The proximity effect, a year spent in the same building as Izuku Midoriya, had tempered them the way heat tempers steel. Todoroki Shoto used both sides now, every time, without hesitation. His ice was colder, his flame was hotter. He combined them in ways that his father, Endeavor, the man who had spent a lifetime trying to create the perfect fusion of fire and ice through selective breeding, had never imagined. And the irony was that Todoroki hadn't achieved it through his father's plan. He'd achieved it because a boy had slapped him across a stadium and told him to stop fighting with one hand. He trained every night in the empty gym. The sounds of cracking ice and roaring flame echoed through the dormitory halls. He was rebuilding himself. After the slap, after the words, after "show me you have a spine," his spine was iron now, and it was pointing upward. Bakugo Katsuki was different. The old Bakugo, the screaming, explosive, crown-wearing king of the classroom, was gone. What replaced him was something harder and more honest. The rage had burned out, the ego had been broken and reassembled into something leaner. He trained harder than anyone in the class, except the one person nobody could match. He expanded his quirk, new applications, new detonation patterns, new ways of using the nitroglycerin sweat that were creative rather than brute force. He never spoke to Izuku. He never looked at him directly. But every day, he measured the distance between himself and the thing that had haunted him since childhood. The distance was still infinite. He kept running anyway. One evening, Kirishima found Bakugo on the dormitory rooftop. Bakugo was sitting against the railing, staring at the city. His hands were in his lap. The right one wasn't trembling. "Hey man," Kirishima said, sitting beside him. "You good?" "Define good." "Like alive and not punching anything." "Then yeah, I'm good." They sat in silence for a minute. The city hummed below. Lights flickered on across the skyline. "He's going to be the strongest thing alive forever," Bakugo said. His voice was even, stripped of everything except truth. "I've known that since I was 10, since he crushed my hand in that hallway and I felt what real power was." "So why do you keep training?" Bakugo looked at his hands. His right hand, the one that had been crushed, the one that had trembled for years, was steady, calloused, strong. "Because the gap doesn't mean I get to stop. The mountain doesn't move, but I can climb." Kirishima looked at him. He grinned. "That's the manliest thing you've ever said." "Shut up! I'm serious! That was beautiful. I'm getting it tattooed. I will kill you." "That's more like it." They sat on the rooftop together. Below them, the city breathed. Above them, the stars came out, indifferent to the dramas of the creatures beneath them. Uraraka Ochako made her move on the last night of the semester. It was midnight. The dormitory was quiet. Most students were asleep or packing. The kitchen was empty except for the hum of the refrigerator and the glow of the stove light. Izuku was sitting at the kitchen table. He'd been eating a plate that had held 3 chicken breasts, a mountain of rice, and a salad. The plate was empty. He was drinking water. His shirt was tight across his chest. His hair was damp from an evening workout. Uraraka walked in. She was wearing pajamas, a loose t-shirt, soft pants, her hair slightly messy from lying in bed and failing to sleep for 2 hours. She carried a wrapped rice ball in both hands. The last one of the semester, she set it on the table in front of him. He looked at it. He looked at her. "I made this one special," she said. Her voice was quiet but steady. She had practiced this. She had been practicing this for 11 months. "It has extra filling, and I shaped it better this time." Izuku unwrapped it. He bit into it. He chewed. He nodded. "Your gravity quirk has reached the point where it could crack a load-bearing structure with enough focus," he said. "You've been holding back." Uraraka blinked. "That's all you have to say?" "No." She waited. Her heart was pounding so hard she was certain he could hear it. He probably could. He could hear everything. He looked at her. He studied her face the way he studied everything, with total comprehension. But this time, there was something else behind it. Something that had been building since the first rice ball, since the entrance exam, since she'd looked up from the rubble and seen him standing between her and the zero-pointer with the expression of a man deciding whether to go around an obstacle or through it. "The rice balls are good," he said. She waited. There had to be more. There had been a 4 now, months ago. There had been glances she'd caught and pretended she hadn't. There had been the way he always ate everything she gave him, every time, without exception. "They've always been good," he said. "Since the first one." Her eyes went wet. Her hands went to her face. She was smiling and crying at the same time, and the combination looked like sunrise breaking through rain. "That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me," she whispered. "I know. I think about you every day." "I know that too. Is that okay?" He looked at her. His green eyes, those bright, ancient, predatory eyes that had seen the inside of a dozen fights and the faces of 1,000 villains, held something that might have been warmth. It was hard to tell. With him, everything was hard to tell. But it was there. "It's acceptable," he said. "Don't you dare use that word with me." "Good then." She stared at him. He stared at her. The kitchen hummed. The refrigerator clicked. She launched across the table and hugged him. Her arms went around his neck, her face pressed against his chest. His body was warm, always warm, the furnace of the Hanma blood running hot at all times. She held on. She was small against him. He was a mountain and she was a bird sitting on its peak. He put one hand on her back. The gesture was unhurried, certain. The same way everything about him was unhurried and certain. "Your heartbeat is very fast," he said. "Shut up," she said into his chest. He almost smiled. Almost. The last day of first year came with morning light, and the specific melancholy of endings that are also beginnings. The students of Class 1A gathered in the courtyard, bags packed, futures uncertain. The world they were returning to was fundamentally different from the one they'd left 10 months ago. The symbol of peace was gone. The villain underworld was crippled. Hero society was restructuring around a new reality. The reality that the strongest person alive was a 17-year-old UA student with green hair and 0 quirk designation, and the ability to end any fight in the country by showing up. Ida stood by the gate with his bag perfectly organized, and his glasses perfectly straight, and his posture as rigid as it had been on the first day. But something behind his eyes was different. Harder. He'd seen Stain broken in an alley. He'd felt his own weakness and chosen to build from it. His engines were faster now. His kicks were sharper. He bowed to Izuku as the larger boy passed. Izuku nodded. It was the closest thing to mutual respect they're ever produced. Koyami stood in the shade of the building. Dark shadow wrapped around him like a cloak. The entity had changed. Since the sports festival, since it had whimpered and retreated from the demon back, it had grown. Quieter, denser, more focused. It had learned what real power looked like, and the knowledge had made it better. Tokoyami caught Izuku's eye and gave a single solemn nod. Izuku returned it. Yaoyorozu had filled 7 notebooks over the year. Her creation quirk was sharper, more creative, more efficient. She had stopped trying to understand Izuku scientifically around month 4 and started trying to understand what his existence meant philosophically, and the shift had made her a better hero. She waved as she left. Izuku nodded. Asui, Jiro, Ashido, Sero, Kaminari, Shoji, Ojiro, Aoyama, Hagakure, Koda, Sato, every student in Class 1A had been changed. Every one of them was stronger, faster, smarter, and more honest about their own limitations than they had been when they walked through the gates 10 months ago. Proximity to something unbeatable had taught them what they could actually be, and for most of them the answer was more than they thought, but less than they dreamed. and that was okay. Kirishima was the last to leave. He found Izuku in the courtyard after everyone else had gone. He stood in front of him with his bag over one shoulder and his hardening quirk activated on one arm, dense, heavy, 4 times tougher than it had been at the start of the year. "You changed me, man," Kirishima said. "You told me muscle is everything. You were right." "I'm always right," Kirishima grinned. "Yeah, you are." He held out his hardened fist. Izuku looked at the fist. He looked at Kirishima's face, the open grin, the honest eyes, the uncomplicated warmth of someone who had chosen to admire instead of envy. He bumped the fist, gently. The gentlest thing he'd done all year. Kirishima's hardening cracked, a single fracture line from the impact point to his wrist. He looked at it. He laughed. "Every time, man. Every single time. Train harder, I will." Kirishima shouldered his bag. "See you next semester." He walked away. Izuku watched him go. Kirishima, the boy who had sat across from him on the 3rd day and called him awesome while getting his arm cracked by a flick, was the closest thing to a friend the strongest creature on Earth had. The word didn't quite fit. Nothing about Izuku's existence fit into normal categories. But if friend meant someone who showed up, stayed honest, and kept trying despite the gap, then Kirishima was the word made flesh. The courtyard emptied. The dormitory quieted. UA. His campus settled into the silence of a school between semesters, hollow, expectant, holding its breath. Izuku stood alone. He looked at the courtyard, at the cracked pavers where he and Mirko had sparred, at the dent in the wall where Bakugo had been backhanded at the start of the year, at the gate post Mirko had kicked, at the scars in the concrete where he'd done push-ups every morning while Nagant watched from 3 blocks away. He walked to the rooftop. The city spread beneath him. 10 million lives flickering in the afternoon light, roads threading between buildings, the distant harbor catching the sun, the skyline changed, scarred in places where Camino had been, rebuilding in others where the war had left its marks, stretching to the horizon. He rolled his shoulders. The demon back shifted beneath his shirt, alive, always waiting. Every villain who had stood against him was broken. The Nomu torn apart, all for one, jawless and vegetative in Tartarus. Shigaraki cratered and imprisoned. The Liberation Army scattered, Stain crippled, muscular cratered. Every petty criminal, every hired thug, every misguided soldier who had placed themselves in his path, educated, hospitalized, or both. Every system that had tried to categorize him had been outpaced. The Commission's sovereign class was a formality, a label slapped on something that existed with or without labels. The hero ranking didn't include him. The threat assessments couldn't measure him. The government's policy was, essentially, acknowledge and coexist. Every person who had tried to diminish him had been educated. Bakugo, who had called him nothing and learned what nothing really looked like. The heroes at the sludge villain incident, who had stood behind their line doing nothing useful and been shown what action actually was. The Commission operatives who had tried to surveil him and learned that he surveilled them back. He flexed his right hand. The knuckles were clean, no bruises, no scars. His body had never retained damage a day in his life. Every wound closed, every bruise faded. Every cell operated at a level of efficiency that made healing instant and damage temporary. He was 17 years old. He had beaten every villain, every hero, every monster, every weapon, and every institution that had been placed in his way. He had done it with muscle, with bone, with blood, that carried the legacy of a lineage that predated quirks and would outlast them. He had won. He always won. That was the fundamental truth of his existence. The same truth that gravity was true, that mountains were true, that the ocean was true. Unchangeable, unarguable, absolute. The wind picked up. It carried the sounds of the city, traffic, voices, the hum of a civilization that was learning to live with a new kind of apex. Below the school, somewhere in the rebuilt streets, Mirko was training. He could feel the vibrations of her kicks through the building's foundations, sharp and rhythmic, growing stronger every day. Somewhere in the dormitory, Midnight was reviewing curriculum for next semester, with the calm focus of a woman who had made her choices and was comfortable with every one of them. Somewhere in the Hero District, Mount Lady was giving an interview and sidestepping every question about her personal life with a smile that said everything and confirmed nothing. Somewhere in the kitchen, In a plastic container in the second shelf of the dormitory refrigerator, there were 3 rice balls. Uraraka had made them this morning before she left for the train station. She'd labeled the container with a note that said, "For the train ride home, Ochako." She'd drawn a small star next to her name. She'd practiced the star 4 times on scrap paper to make sure it looked right. Something stirred in the distance, beyond the city, beyond the horizon, something in the dark that hadn't come yet, something old, something vast, something that moved beneath the surface of the world like a current beneath the ocean. He couldn't name it. He couldn't see it. He could feel it, the way a predator feels the approach of something that might, possibly, for the first time, require its full attention. The thought should have concerned him. It didn't. Concern was for people who doubted their ability to survive what came next. Izuku Midoriya had never doubted anything in his life. "Either I find it entertaining," he said to the empty sky, "or it ends up dead." He rolled his shoulders. The demon back surged, the face between his shoulder blades opening its mouth in a silent roar that rippled through the muscle like an earthquake through stone. The shirt stretched, the seams strained, the rooftop beneath his feet trembled. He turned from the edge. He walked toward the stairs. He descended. He passed the empty hallway, the quiet classrooms, the dormitory kitchen where the refrigerator hummed and 3 rice balls waited. He took the container. He opened it. He ate one on the stairs. It was good. They were always good. He walked through the front gate of UA High School. He walked into the city. The afternoon light fell around him like a spotlight that couldn't decide where to land, so it landed everywhere. And the shadows it threw were longer than they should have been, wider than they should have been, shaped like something that the world was still learning to name, the strongest creature on the face of this earth, alone at the top of the world, walking home. And behind him, in the ruins of every fight he'd ever had, in the craters and the wreckage and the jaw lying on the ground in Kamino Ward, the world breathed in and held it and wondered what came next. Izuku Midoriya didn't wonder. He already knew. Whatever it was, it would kneel or it would break. There was no third option.
The hero roster. A massive salute to the legends backing this journey. Your support is what keeps the momentum at an all-time high and the dream moving forward. You guys are the absolute best. Pro heroes. The elite front line, stepping up and setting the pace for the whole community. DA, Fire 05. Symbol of peace. The pillars of the community. The titans who keep our foundation solid and the hype at an all-time high. Alex Morgan, Ray Various, Blaze, that other guy too, Chad Reynolds, Zachariah Allison, Tamaki 68 Rimuru, Kelvin Bowman, Mr. Panda, Azatros, Dweller of the Deepest Depths, Damian Leon, Jacob Rops, Christian Mullins, Bully Maguire Shadow, Neostar Productions, Assail Cardenas, Shaquan Simmons, Thunder, Sunwind 631, Elijah Saunders, Peter Hamilton, Freddie Rose, Omega, Akuma no Akami, Chris Talley, Remorsefuls, Black Vein, Joshua Hedrington, Aaron Abercrombie, Drift SK8er, Corey Tokars, Quan Yen Thompson, Yon, Devin Black, Crow, Dasher Games, Joe Bruce, Ray Von Crimson River, Dante Allister, Adam Yonkers, Blood Saints, Donna Cafe, Zeph, KC, Howie 60, Ignacio.
Hope of the universe, the ultimate guardians, celestial tier supporters whose impact literally shines across the galaxy. Noroi Uzumaki Uchiha, Keishan, Coldbane 4, The Maniac 563, Sean Brooks, Debs, L.S. Morningstar, Marl, Spintown, I Shoot X50, Greg Green, James, Quanyen Thompson, Juan, and Zeno KJ.
And that's the full story of Izuku Midoriya, the ogre, the demon, the man who needed nothing and took everything. If this hit different, smash that like button, drop a comment on who your favorite moment was, and subscribe, because we're just getting started. See you next time.